Hello, and welcome to my channel. I am Damien Marie AtHope. In the simplest terms, I am an atheist-humanist philosopher and prehistorical writer-researcher at DamienMarieAtHope.com. I am specifically an axiological atheist. An axiological atheism can be thought to involve ethical and value theory reasoned and moral argument driven apatheism, agnosticism, atheism, antitheism, antireligionism, secularism, and humanism. Axiological atheists can be understood as a value theory or a value science atheist. As an axiological atheism's ethically reasoned and constructive pro-humanity. I am an axiological thinker, value theorist. The science of goodness, worthiness, usefulness, valuableness, virtue, reliableness, accuracy, validity, morality, integrity, beneficialness, etc., etc. We axiologists have a value consciousness. And in general, we see the architecture of humanistic humanitarianism value in people that we see as dignity beings. Places and things are not. Axiology is a value theory. In its broadest sense, it involves areas of philosophy that are deemed to encompass some evaluative or evaluation aspect. Therefore, it crosses almost all domains in some way or another. Now for a more detailed terms as to what I am. I am an axiological atheist, an anti-theist, an anti-religionist, secularist, humanist, rationalist, writer, artist, poet, philosopher, advocate, activist with schooling in psychology, sociology, as well as I am an autodidact, self-taught in science, archaeology, anthropology, and philosophy. I promote science and am against pseudoscience, pseudo-history, pseudo-morality, things that are found in religion.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Not too bad. Yourself?
It's been going. I've been doing more painting in my house, so I'm painting art that I got.
Nice.
Got all this like goth art, and I've been painting it so it matches my colors.
Ah, there you go. That's all right. That sounds cool.
Yeah, it feels good to have my house be like me. I got like grim reapers and skeleton heads and
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome.
So today we're gonna have Jeffrey. He still, I think, has pneumonia, so that's why he's not gonna be as long. So he's gonna try to do it for an hour or however long he can do, feels adequate. And then when he stops, then we'll not address anything he said it right away. We'll first do when we may, depends on what he says. You know me.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. But anyways, but my point is that then I want you to read, the 5-page script. Because I don't feel like most people even know what the shit we're talking about, mound cultures of America, and
right.
They're thinking, what the shit? And then, of course, when they hear mounds, they're thinking just like big, stupid piles of dirt or something that have no meaning. And that is absolutely fucking wrong. And so I sent 2 pictures to you to show you.
Right.
You
yeah. Yeah. I saw
just to give you an idea that when we're talking dirt mounds, we're really talking like temples.
Right.
Dirt mound temples. It needs to be explained better.
Yeah.
Or sometimes they make it up and then an elite goes on top. Or sometimes they put like, a thing of fire or something sacred towards God or whatever. But or ancestors are given for sky barrel or something. My point is it's not trash.
Right. It's a built structure. Right.
It's legitimate stuff.
Yeah. This is an intentionally built structure. It's not just where a pile of stuff.
Especially because I think a lot of people always think, oh, the Egyptian pyramids or whatever. Right. And they don't think about other stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's
And
for
like
sure. Yeah. Like people, that's why Ancient Aliens and whatever has such a broad appeal, right? Because
exactly, because they don't know, and then it's all mysterious. And
yeah.
I'm like, well, it may be mysterious, but the biggest reason it's mysterious is because you haven't been taught.
Yeah, that's right.
Not because archaeologists have no clue about it, but
yeah, not because it's legitimately mysterious, but
right.
yeah.
But some of that also is intentional lack of knowledge.
Right.
In other words, and this is very, very common in Ohio, if I remember right. In Ohio, when they found these mound structures, their first thought was they had to have been built by white people, like, Graham Hancock's.
Right, right.
They couldn't possibly be that natives could have, built these with like, spiritual principles. Like what? Yeah, total like racist bullshit.
Right. Yeah, because they like actually believed that the indigenous people were not capable of doing things.
Right, total racism. And then the other thing is, if you're going to take over a place that other people have already owned, in other words, they have their mosques or their church or their whatever, you have to make it not that, because then it sounds like you're infringing on religious liberties, right? I mean, if we literally say, let's tear this mound down, like in California they did. There's this one famous big one. Okay. They tore it down and built, I don't know, a skating rink or something right on top of it. I mean, just think of how fucking hideous that would be if someone were to go to in Israel, that thing everybody prays to, Sermon on the Mount, or something,
right?
Build a fun center for families right on top of that shit.
Yeah.
Let's see how fucking happy they would be. I mean, I feel like it's beyond my normal thing of saying, that I like to learn history or that I like to expose religion. This also to me is I like to expose racism.
Right.
Because this is why nobody knows about this shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
No, that's fair.
And in Florida, they destroyed them, and they, say with Maine too, several places in the United States actually had stuff, and they just flattened it down like in Florida, and they took all the shells and they put them in the road. And then they talk about how great it is that they, have built the roads with these native artifacts. I'm thinking, yeah, that's
dude.
We took the pyramids apart because it made good, walls for a prison,
or like you've got this backwards. You destroyed something beautiful and made roads.
Like, yeah, right. Yeah. That's my point is that even today they still kind of offhandedly say this like it's a good thing.
Right.
Like, isn't it great? Our roads look beautiful because there's all kinds of shell in it. You know why they're shelling it? Because we destroyed thousands of native, temples. Hey.
Hello.
So we were just talking real quick about the what I feel the reason why, in my opinion, one of the reasons why I feel like people don't know about the mound cultures is racism and colonialism of America, not wanting to show that there was these vast complexes of religious, gatherings or cultural gatherings, and thus ownership of land and right to land or whatever. So I feel like a lot of that manifest destiny kind of racism stuff and colonialism is why, because I know there's Florida and California and Maine, there's a whole bunch of even shell mounds that were also like pyramids and stuff. They just flattened them down, built stuff on them, or used it for roads, and just really disrespectful ways to me.
Well, a lot of the initial kind of colonialism that came in was the idea that is called the mound builder myth, which was that the indigenous people that early Europeans met and everything like that weren't actually the ones who constructed the mounds, that they had came in and killed whoever the mound builders were. And because of that, it justified the treatment, and that the Europeans were actually just taking back the land from the Native Americans, which is complete and utter, bull crap.
Exactly. Right, so that's why I wanted to explain that. A lot of my videos, I'm an anti-religionist and an atheist. A lot of my videos, I try to debunk religion or expose it so people understand it more. But this also is an issue for me about the mound builders. Has nothing to do with that, but has to do with colonialism and racism. I mean, the other stuff too. I still have that opinion, but being a leftist, whenever I hear people being oppressed and stuff, and then I learn about it, and then I also learn that other people don't know, and that's kind of the reason. That's even more offensive to me. I mean, there's beautiful stuff, and yet that's not taught in school every day. I mean, it's ridiculous. The founding fathers, we should start a little bit earlier.
Yeah, it's really so little background. I'm Creole from South Louisiana.
Sorry, go real quick, just go ahead and tell us your name, who you are.
Okay. So my name's JT Lewis. I'm currently a Ph.D. student at the University of Oklahoma. I specialize in hunter-gatherer cultures of pre-contact, primarily in the archaic and woodland periods. So from about 5,600 years ago to about 1,000 years ago. I primarily focused on top of that on lithic and landscape analysis, so lithic, stone tools, anything like that. And then landscape, I try to focus both on, showing that hunter-gatherer people didn't just, survive on the land, but, managed it and everything like that. And then also kind of the importance beyond just, environment or subsistence and things like that, but in a spiritual nature, the importance of the landscape to people and things like that. My master's thesis research was on the Poverty Point site, which is kind of, for a long time, was kind of this, one that broke all the rules with hunter-gatherers. But as we, if you take a broader picture of what hunter-gatherers are, capable of and everything like that, it doesn't really break the mold. It just kind of breaks what early people thought about.
Do you know about the Tlingit up in the Pacific coast of Canada? Right.
Yeah.
They're like semi-sedentary. They have slavery. They have hierarchy. They had all this potlatch where they give away stuff and expected and this ceremony, and yet they're supposedly hunter-gatherers, but they're extremely not what we would consider hunter-gatherers.
Yeah.
So
the Chumash on the California coast had, as far as we can tell, had a currency, the shell currency, which was is not supposed to be there for hunter-gatherers and things like that. My current research focuses in kind of the primary same area, but mainly in southeastern Oklahoma, and that is on the Fushmaline archaeological culture.
I don't know that. What is that?
Yes, that's not a well-known archaeological culture. That is pre-Caddo, so pre-Spiro, and all of these. Caddo's not really known for its very, for Spiro being this place where there's the mortuary mound with all the engraved shell and this copper trade and everything like that. So pre-Caddo would be the Fushmaline archaeological culture. And they were primarily the same regional area, but they were a lot more isolated. And that's kind of why I'm looking into it. I'm not sure exactly why they were more isolated, if it was kind of on themselves or other groups were isolating them. But they also had what was kind of stereotypically called midden mounds or trash mounds.
Yeah, I don't like that term, because to me, like I said, from research I've done, a lot of the shell mounds are 70 feet high. I don't know, how do you accidentally 70 feet high make a mound for centuries? Yeah, come on.
And so the Fushmaline midden mounds are these really dark black. It looks like they were purposely burning the soil to make this dark, rich soil. They were also used for burials, not only of humans but also of dogs in southeastern Oklahoma, and they were completed items that possibly were never used before were put in there, and along with sherds and debitage from production of lithic material as well. And so
I didn't. You said chart. You're talking about the stone, right? Because I thought you said shirt.
No.
It's probably just your accent, I was like, is he talking about the stone?
No. There was boat stones in there. These things called double-pitted axes, which aren't actually an axe, they're probably more used for like a gardening hoe, and things like that are found in them. And for a long time, a lot of people haven't researched it. It's probably there's a lot in North America that's very little research, but at majority of times, at even major conferences, I will be the only one presenting on Fushmaline.
Well, just so you know, I know you're going to be short on here today, but I would definitely like you to come back another time and talk about this stuff. Especially, maybe we'll just do a video on the mound builders or all this kind of stuff, because I really, dig all this stuff, and I definitely like to hear the real archaeology. I mean, I make speculations once I find out the real archaeology, which I think is, to me, something different than the Graham Hancock bullshit. Graham Hancock starts with an idea, then tries to sort of cherry pick, find stuff. I like looking at all the data and then seeing if something makes sense to me. So
yeah, and that's. I mean, if you want to go ahead and start talking about Graham Hancock, we can go there.
Sure.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. So Hancock, he is very skilled at leading an audience in the direction he wants them to go. And he always phrases things so where he has an out. He goes, "Oh, I didn't say that. I just said let's look at it," and things like that. Instead of saying, he goes, "Oh, I'm not a scientist, and I'm not an archaeologist." Well, if you're not a scientist and you're not an archaeologist, then what are you doing? Like, what are you spending all this time going out there? Because I guess a little additional background. Before getting into grad school, I did not have any background in anthropology or archaeology. I actually worked for the railroad and got laid off and took an introduction to archaeology class. And I was like, man, I really want to do that. So having kind of an outside perspective has benefited me coming into archaeology. But there's been plenty of amateur advocationalists, whatever you'd like to call them, who work with archaeologists and still have amazing like discoveries in archaeology or rediscoveries. I actually prefer the term rediscoveries for a lot of sites. And one of this is being Clarence Webb, who was actually a medical doctor in Louisiana and had some of the groundbreaking work on Poverty Point, on many of the non-pottery, pre-pottery archaic hunter-gatherers in Louisiana, so much so that when he passed away, archaeologists, professional, academic, whatever you want to say, archaeologists had a tribute ceremony discussing about the groundbreaking work he did. And even today, there's the cave art in France that a furniture carpenter, I think, was working on, and saying that it was tracking pregnancies and reproductive periods for the animals that were being hunted and things, which would be a very important information for hunter-gatherers to know. And then archaeologists worked with them on that. So there's kind of this idea that there's a mainstream archaeology that no one can go against, and anyone who goes against it is just kind of immediately removed and things like that. It's really funny how often I see, I try to have a lot of engagement on Twitter and things like that, and the amount of times I see people say, "Oh, well, look at so and so. They are the Cerruti Mastodon site," which I don't personally agree with the age and stuff like that. And they're like,
"You're talking
their
about
careers
the one in America? It's 130. Yeah, I don't buy that either. To me, you have supposed cracks or something with no weapon. I mean,
yeah, there's the site was heavily disturbed and everything like that. There needs to be more evidence.
There some kind of rock drop on it, or couldn't earth fall, or a flood, or something roll it, or snow or ice, or
Yeah, there's a lot of different possibilities with it, and for the claim, the evidence doesn't hold up to the claim for something that spectacular and things like that, but. A lot of people say, like,
what do you think about the 50,000? Because I heard there's stuff. Because I saw someone there's a Native American woman who put out a book about all the old stuff in America, and at first I thought that's crazy. There's nothing older than 24,000. in the Bluefish caves, and then I started looking some more. I'm like, well, maybe it's older now.
Right now, I'm open to the possibility of things being older, but right now, a lot of the evidence at least seems to suggest about 24 to probably about 32,000 years ago, somewhere in between there, and that's where most of the evidence is that can kind of be correlated together. I'm open to there being more, and the idea of how people got to North America keeps changing, and as more evidence comes in. So I'm definitely open to right now. If I were to if I were to have to stake my flag into something or something like that, it would probably be around 26 to 32,000 years ago. But that's not an area that I specialize in. I try to be very open about the possibilities of what and things like that. But a lot of people, and I think Hancock really tries to promote this, that people who say, even with the Surrey Mastodon, who say this are instantly thrown out of archaeology, and they no longer get grant funding. Their jobs are removed. They no longer publish. But if you just any of these people, they still have students. They're still publishing in some of the highest levels of academic journals and things like that, are still at the conferences with everyone else and things like that. And I think Hancock is relying on people not knowing better, not knowing that these people are still out at conferences promoting, or not knowing that they're still publishing and things like that. He's relying on that information, because I'll hear people say that all the time, and I just screenshot a Google Scholar page, and it's this is just in the last year he's published 7 more things. An archaeologist from the Surrey Mastodon site. So I'm they're definitely not. Now people will argue against them, but I think that's very different from thinking that they're being blacklisted or removed completely from archaeology. Having someone argue is I thought that's what Hancock and his fans want, is people to argue against other people.
No, they don't. They want you to blindly believe whatever they say. They don't want to be. To me, the ideas are best championed in the sunlight of challenge. Because when you expose, if it's good, then you should watch. Like me, I want everyone to read my blogs. I make all kinds of speculations. Of course, I say that's what they are, and then I try to not be owning them. In other words, like Hancock, I feel like he owns one idea, and then 20 years later, it's still same idea, hasn't really developed or anything. He just, for me, I even look back at my ideas and go, do they still make sense? Are they still do something I agree? I've now learned more. Do I need to update them or sometimes remove them? I just recently, I had a belief for 4 or 5 years, I don't know exactly, that millet had gone from China and then brought language to Europe. Well, there was evidence that before that millet had gone there 7,000 years ago. But then the science came back and said, no, that was wrong. So I had to update my thinking and go, okay, my old theory is wrong. Mm-hmm. Because if millet didn't go there, well, then that whole theory I had, or speculation I had, in the sense formed, can't be accurate. Yeah. Which, like you said, he says a lot of things that, like you said, you can't disprove because he's being so careful. I tried to not be careful, because if you can disprove me, I want to hear it. I mean, to me, that's why I feel like it's such disingenuous to Hancock. Dude, you don't really care about truth, because if you did, then you would welcome being challenged. And if you were shown wrong, you would then change. Yeah. And one other avenue that I try to take too is, I don't care if someone feels or thinks a certain way, as long as it's not a racist or mindset and things like that. So if someone can have if someone wants to just because if someone just wants to feel that that people did get here 130,000 years ago, they're free to feel that. I don't want to stop. I don't want to hurt. I'm not trying to bash anyone's feelings or anything like that. But they have to be aware that the evidence isn't there to support it. That is just a feeling. Because I'll be honest, I'm a religious person. I have a little bit
because I'm Creole is a little bit of a mix of various religions kind of got put together, like a lot of indigenous people in North America have. But I know that that's all faith-based. It's all faith. And so when I'm trying to get with somebody, and Hancock has this very, taking these psychedelics and everything like that. You can see things and things like that. That's fine. If that's how he feels, that's fine with me. I have no qualms about that's how a person feels.
Well, and I just want to make a comment too that I say it's not in my writing. Even though I'm an anti-religionist, I am not anti-people being religious. I feel everyone owns themselves. I'm an anarchist, so to me, everyone owns themselves. Everyone has a right to their thinking. I don't attack people just because they say they believe something. If they say it is true, then that is what I'm addressing, because now you're talking about something different.
Yeah.
If you're just saying, like you said, if someone says I feel, I more than likely I don't even say anything. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
like,
and I think that's the big thing that people aren't really aware of a lot of times, at least, and I kind of have to reiterate sometimes when I'm talking to people, is I'm not trying to destroy someone's open-mindedness. Like, people can be open-minded, and you can have a feeling that, you can have a feeling that there was an ancient civilization. That's fine. But you have to realize that there's not evidence for that. If you're taking that stand, then that's fine. You can take a stand that there's a lost civilization, as long as you realize that there's not there's no backing to it. That's fine with me.
It's a faith belief.
Yeah, but when you're
not a reality belief.
Yeah, but when you're instead going, okay, I see all the evidence, and I want to not only disagree with that evidence, is I want to also say that the indigenous people who did create it, whatever, didn't actually do it on their own. Mm-hmm. That's a different story, because then you're not only are you taking your faith-based assumption and marking it as the truth, you're also taking something away from a group of people.
Right.
And that's when it becomes an issue for me. I also feel, as much as Hancock has said, he has his back and forth with the SAA, and for some reason, a lot of people assume that the SAA is archaeology, and while a big part of it is academic archaeologists make up about 15% of all archaeologists, and then SAA itself is only a fraction of that number, because it's in North America only, and not all academic archaeologists are in SAA. So, you're thinking of maybe like 3%, maybe 2-3% of all archaeologists are associated with SAA. And then of that, only the board members of SAA are making that comment. So you've got, less than 1% of all archaeologists making a comment to Hancock, and people are thinking like, oh, all archaeologists are only wanting to talk about X. They won't talk about Hancock's ideas or his theories and things like that. But in reality, there's a large portion that are, but they're just taking one evidence. And then Hancock comes back like, I've never misrepresented data, or I've never initially lied.
Wrong.
And I recently found for Gunung Padang, which is a totally amazing site. The one credit I do have to give Hancock for anything is at least going out and doing some filming of these areas to get people aware of them.
And I mentioned to someone, I'll acknowledge that that's the case. And the best way to watch Hancock videos is with the sound off, because then you can limit the pseudo stuff and just stick to what's actually real.
Yeah. But Hancock in the first episode will mention, they were amazed when this layer from Gunung Padang dated to 11,600 years ago. Well, Dr. Hilman Nadawajaja, which has a totally whole separate different issues with it and everything like that, released the radiocarbon dates, and nothing dates to that. It's either 9,000 or 24,000. There's no in between.
A big fallacy he's pushing, because if there's different dates and they coincide with different occupations or behaviors, why would you think they're all connected? I mean, it's fucking they're literally not connected, and they're doing different things. There's even times in between, and yet you're acting as if there's this uniform, thing. Come on.
Well, it's a lot of his stuff hinges on it being 11,600. I don't understand, because a bunch of the sites he visits to date to 3,000-4,000 years separation in between them, if not more, and he's still the same group of survivors is still traveling around.
It's
immortality, I guess, has been achieved at that point.
Blatantly a fallacy. It's blatantly a fallacy. So he says he's not misrepresenting. Another thing he says all the time: everything is getting older. He loves to say that because, like you said, he wants it to be all 11,000 years old, which it isn't. So I mean, it doesn't.
No, there's
what the hell?
So my issues with Hancock is that he does misrepresent data, but that he's also boxing archaeologists into one group. There are plenty of archaeologists that I do not agree with, and there's plenty that do not agree with me. It is I've started publishing recently, and archaeologists who have just been oh no, that's not correct. I'm like, oh no, I think I'm correct. Or I've had archaeologists who have disagreed about reviewing my publication with each other and me at the same time. So disagreements happen continuously. If anything, there's sometimes people in archaeology hold grudges too long for disagreeing with each other. So this idea that there's all this one mainstream archaeology and everyone agrees on everything, and it's such a load of crap, to put it bluntly. And
yeah, just like you were saying, right? So I know a lot of stuff. I can talk to you all day long. I know a lot of stuff about a lot of archaeology. I study stuff from 1 million years, all the way down to 5,000. Every single place in the United States, every single place in the world. I mean, I didn't want to be limited, because when I first started doing this, my goal was, I didn't believe religion anymore, but I didn't believe atheists either. I didn't believe religious people or atheists. I didn't believe anybody. I didn't believe skeptics. I didn't believe anyone. I wanted to go look, okay, what's the truth? What can I find out? So, but I'm not an academic even. So I do this just purely as a revolutionary thing, to teach the truth, to expose the reality of the world. That's so people can get self-mastery. That's my goal. Yeah. And hopefully together, we can change and make a better, caring, and more adequate world for everybody. But my point is, so I do that. I've been talking to archaeologists for years, different ones, right? And I don't have the issues that Hancock does, where he says about, archaeologists not wanting to take me serious or whatever. I say all kinds of things, sometimes they've agreed, sometimes they've disagreed. I don't have that problem with that. I don't understand. Yeah. Like I said, if you're a truth seeker, if you attacked my ideas, Jeffrey, if you went through my whatever blog or video or anything I did, and you pick out and attack things, that doesn't make me hate you. That makes me say, great, let's have a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the other thing. I've got two more points I kind of just want to make about Hancock. One is kind of what you're talking about there, and I really don't understand this, because I have a personal friend who has been along with Hancock, who has sat down and talked with Hancock, and they are a professional archaeologist. I know that Hancock has gone out with other professional archaeologists. Klaus Schmidt, who's was one of the primary archaeologists on Göbekli Tepe, had Graham Hancock along during excavations for 3 days. So, where's this idea that everyone's out to get you coming from? You have archaeologists sitting around, but I think he knows that all archaeologists aren't out to get him. But I think he's playing up the fact that that people want to go against, they want to cheer for the underdog. They want to, they want to go against the establishment and things like that. And he is completely correct in some aspects that archaeology is academia, non-academics, it doesn't matter. There are issues. One of the whole reasons I'm getting into archaeology is because I saw some issues in the academia aspects of archaeology. I wanted to be a change for that. But when you're just going, playing yourself a victim and a martyr and like, look at all of them coming against me, and you're the millionaire. This is the other part I don't like. Everyone's like, go Hancock, go Hancock. He's standing up against the establishment. I'm like, guys, I don't know if you know this or not, but Hancock is the one that has way more money and way more following. He isn't the little guy.
Yeah, he's the Tucker Carlson of archaeology.
Yeah, he's the big guy. Like archaeologists are the underdogs in this, not the. And so
that's a good one. Which like I said before, I feel is really important because a lot of times leftists want to fight anything that has to do with, say, sort of a bigger, societal oppression or whatever. And so, and I do think that when archaeology started, it didn't start with the highest of intention. It was more like, glorifying the one person, and it was all about, not standards. But that was like, what, 100 years ago or 50 years ago? I mean, or whatever. I mean, we're not talking about current people. Most of the people, like I was telling Cory, most of the people, a lot of the, people that are like me, the leftists, don't really know that archaeologists a lot of times are very thoughtful when it comes to gender and when it comes to, oppression. I was even telling him, to me, there's a difference between historians and archaeologists. To me, archaeologists work in all the data so that you get more of a regular person besides just a leader perspective. Where historians, it's really about who wrote stuff. Well, who wrote stuff is the elite. Yeah. So they focus a lot on elite. Yeah. I'm not saying that I'm against historians. I'm just saying I find them to be not as commonly aware or thoughtful to me about like the little people and like the experience. Like as one lady was saying how great Rome is. I said, yeah, that they raped and tortured and killed. And
that was used to, I guess it was probably around the 60s and kind of into the early 80s, but mostly finished before then. There was a lot on kind of the top-down approach, looking at the elites, the highest of highs and things like that, and using that to make kind of cultural descriptions or histories about people. But for at least since the mid 80s and things like that, it's kind of been the opposite. Everybody's wanting to know, what the non-elites are doing, and not just so much like a comparison between the non-elites and elites, but honestly, just what daily life was for non-elites, for the everyday person in a lot of these situations. And that's why it's still a challenge too, because especially in some areas, the things that stand out the most are what the elites commissioned to be built and things like that.
But see, just how you said it though, that's the correct way. What they commissioned to be built. Because a lot of people, I feel totally wrong, say that they, like, the king built the pyramid or the king didn't build this. The king didn't build anything. So, anyways, I appreciate you saying that, because it just shows my point.
Yeah. But one of the most valuable things in all of archaeology aren't these huge monuments or anything like that, because you get some information from that, but you don't really get a lot of information about the people from that. What you get a lot of information from is the garbage. There's even archaeologists have even like branched out into a modern day studies of, we call it garbology, the study of garbage, because that's one of our most data rich things about learning about the everyday lives of people and everything like that. And so I'm gonna get to my last qualm with Hancock real quick. Is that
please keep going. I can't stand the guy. So you feel free.
My last big thing with him is he doesn't define anything. So when he says, like, archaeologists say no civilization could come around since prior to 6,000 years ago and things like that, there's a couple of issues with that. One, a lot of archaeologists don't use the term civilization anymore, especially in a lot of more in-depth conversations. Archaeology has this whole thing is like, trying to teach someone who's not familiar with archaeology, so we still have to use certain terms to kind of best reflect it. But in a lot of their more like an archaeology academic journal, the term civilization isn't really used a lot. The other is Hancock never says, "Oh, well, how are archaeologists defining a civilization to make that comment?" Because at that point, because then people are like, "Oh, well, Göbekli Tepe has monumental architecture and all these other things. How are they not?" It's proof that archaeologists are wrong. Well, when he's quoting archaeologists saying that it started 6,000 years ago, one, is he quoting something from like the 70s, first off, but other than that, it's because when archaeologists are defining a civilization, they're talking about state level political hierarchy. There needs to be a standing army, high concentration of population, agriculture, monumental architecture, language, and all written language, and all these things, and then that marks a civilization. But that was even combated because in the Andes they had a numerical system, but not so much a written language. But they were like, oh, well, we definitely can't say that that's not a civilization. So it even changed then. So the whole idea that Hancock gets away with is that he says archaeologists say something, and then he doesn't define any of it, and then just says, "Oh, look, I proved it wrong." But you're not defining it, so of course it's easy. If I just say, this equation equals this, and then don't tell anyone how it came out to, and then said, "Oh, but look, this guy answered differently." Wrong. That's how he argues, and people, for whatever reason, are never question that he never defines anything. They take his word as kind of like law and move on to the next, and then it's like, oh yeah, archaeologists are wrong.
Yeah, I like I said, I don't like a lot of things about Graham Hancock. I feel that everyone's being too nice to him, because I feel like a lot of it is absolute racism, and a lot of it is absolute lying. That the dude is lying, because just like the DNA. Because in one of his blogs, right, he says that the ancient culture is RB1 DNA from around Siberia, central Siberia. Well, you can take a thing. They have RB1, like you can track it on a YouTube video, and they show it staying in the land and then going, in the land, and it never is even seafaring until probably like 3,000 years ago or something. I mean,
yeah.
And then he's trying to track it to the Americas, right? Supposedly. But if you look at the ancient North Eurasian DNA, it goes across the Bering Strait when it was dirt or whatever, dry land, not seafaring. So when they came over, if that's his big theory, to me the DNA just proves him completely. Because first it shows that they went over at a time when there was no need to have seafaring, and then they go into the center of the Great Lakes, and then, which is also more land, so they didn't need boats to get there. Of course, they could make maybe canoes on the Great Lakes, but then that DNA goes straight down to Mexico. Okay, but that DNA is land. So I don't know how you could look at that DNA and go seafarers.
Yeah,
I mean, it's freaking ridiculous.
And I think I can kind of branch the two topics right here. Actually, the Hancock himself may not be racist. I can't put it to the guy's head, but his arguments align with arguments that were racist, and that's going right back into the mound builders. Kind of the mound builder myth was, that that population couldn't be responsible for it. It had to come from someone else, and that's the same narrative that's in Ancient Apocalypse. He does very carefully, go around that by going in when he does his episode 6, which, but when he talks about poverty point and things like that, he says, "Oh, well, the indigenous people constructed it, but I think the astronomical information, everything like that, came from somewhere else." Well, that's okay. You're just one step above mound builder myth at that point. Like you're not far off from that, because that's still saying, someone's responsible for the just grand layout of it, but the indigenous people were the ones that moved the dirt around. Like you're just one step above mound builder myth.
I agree. It's ridiculous. But let's just say that I always try to buy what people are selling and then show how it's still wrong. Even if we agreed that ideas came in, wouldn't they have had to have been in the cultures up in the north as well as the ones in the south? Because if they came from there and then the ideas were older and then filtered down in any kind of way, you would have to find the ones up in the north, like Canada and Alaska and even, say, the Great Lakes, because I know the copper and some of the ideas come from up there. You would have to match it, but it doesn't match. So idea that...
Yeah, and with mound building, we see... So in the eastern woodlands, mound building kind of...
Which is, you're talking about a time frame or an area? Because there's...
An area, the eastern woodlands. So that's...
Please tell people. I mean, I have a kind of idea, but
so that's part of Texas. Kind of, if you go cut Texas kind of in thirds, you look at all the way to the eastern part, and then kind of go straight up. Everything off to the east of that is the eastern woodlands. Kind of before you hit the plains area and before you hit the Great Basin and everything like that. Mound building kind of you get this really origination in the lower Mississippi Valley. So lower Mississippi Valley is, Mississippi, Louisiana, these two areas. And you have this strong correlation between that mound building and the spread of mound building throughout eastern North America.
Right.
Even so, Hancock says that archaeologists aren't willing to look at astronomical alignments or cardinal direction alignments. So in 2010, Joe Sanders, who sadly has passed away, led a team of looking at all Middle Archaic. So,
what's that, 3,000 or 4,000?
That's prior. That's about 4,000 years ago, a little or older. 5,600 is about 4,000. These Middle Archaic mounds that were built, and he did a survey of all of them, and that includes there's about 17 of them, probably a little bit more that are just on private land that haven't been identified yet. Middle Archaic mound structures, and none of them had cosmological alignments. None of them are originated to cardinal directions. Now, in the late Archaic period, you see them building off of the Middle Archaic, and so he talked about that at the Poverty Point site, where the Lower Jackson Mound, which is a Middle Archaic mound, aligns in a north cardinal direction with Mound E, Mound B, and Mound A, and then Mound C.
Poverty Point does this, but that's not a common feature in all the other mounds, which is what I was saying. Exactly. If what you say has any weight and it came down from these people and spread over, then it should be evident. If you can pick and choose all over the place.
And you've also got Mound C to Motley Mound in a north cardinal direction there. And we see this kind of throughout the lower Mississippi Valley. There is a strong tie to heritage in that area. I mean, you see it today, indigenous communities, but you see this callback constantly to, people's ancestors. So the Poverty Point is a late Archaic, so it came after the Middle Archaic with the Lower Jackson Mound. So you see them calling reference back to those Middle Archaic mounds and everything like that. And then later on, you see in the woodland period, you still see callbacks to the late Archaic mounds and everything like that. And it's just a continued kind of progression of mound building that still correlates to older mound building.
Right.
And you have this really important, and this is the other thing, I try to answer a lot of questions about when people will say like, oh, well, why was there no empire in Eastern North America? I was like, okay, well, one, Cahokia had a higher population and higher reach than Paris did, and they were contemporaneous sites at the same time. But the other is that just because, Europeans preferenced a, empire building, strict hierarchical society, that doesn't mean that that's the one way to go. There's even cases where in kind of Georgia and Florida area where a group decided that they switched to agriculture from foraging and then switched back to foraging because they're like, we don't like this lifestyle. But that kind of blows people's mind.
Right? Isn't there a pottery shows up in Florida, then disappears, and then shows up again? I think maybe in spreads and then disappears or something. Like you're saying, like you get technology and then they're like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and that's the big thing is that people can preference to not have that they don't like that kind of leadership. Right. At Chaco Canyon, which is in the Western North America. The Navajo.
Which, do you think that has influences from California, which I know relates to the Aztecan languages of Southern California? They all start there, or I have a question? Mm-hmm. Or do you think that it came from the Mississippi side influencing in, or do you think it's a matter of both, or is it just a unique thing that has nothing to do with those two influences?
I definitely think that Cahokia was influenced, but I don't think it would be by the Eastern. I think a lot of the like I was saying,
not Cahokia. I'm talking about. Didn't you say Chaco Canyon?
Yeah.
What I'm saying, Chaco Canyon. I'm saying, I can't remember exactly, but wasn't there something about, I don't know if it's DNA or artifacts coming from the Eastern side, but I know they were getting people migrating from California into and then into Mexico. But I'm saying the reason I bring up this issue for me is that I know the Pueblo has unique god and goddess beliefs that aren't exactly shared with everywhere else in the Americas, somewhat similar, but not exactly, but do really similar to like Indo-European religion. In other words, I'm saying a sky father and an earth mother. They have this, all the Pueblo. And I know that, I'm just saying, I know that those other Chaco Canyon could have been like an earlier version with the Anasazi or whatever.
Yeah,
I'm also asking.
So two things with that. Chaco Canyon was definitely, for me, there's a lot of different arguments on Chaco Canyon. There's actually about 7 different arguments about what Chaco Canyon is. One that I kind of agree the most with is that it was a prominent group that moved there to establish Chaco Canyon instead of just kind of being it. So there's an intended function of Chaco Canyon and things like that. And those would be from, I think, probably around northern Mexico, Arizona, New Mexico. I don't know the exacts of where. It probably has multiple influences from several different areas in there.
Oh yeah, exactly. I'm not saying that it is limited to not other things. I'm just saying that to me, I know that the language shoots over, and then all these people have these versions of similar sort of religious ideas. And I if I remember right, I can't remember now, but I thought that the Mississippi culture, either some items or artifacts or something sort of related to that. But I know the Hopewell was trading all over the place. So.
Yeah, there's definitely there's kind of arguments about how aware everyone is of each other, and that's really, other than you just finding an artifact from one location to the other. That's kind of a big kind of debate topic in archaeology. I definitely think that pre-contact indigenous people were much more coherent about what the world around them than people think and everything like that. The one potential kind of thought process when comparing religions across a broad landscape is to remember that the early work on that still kind of foundation that people have built upon kind of wanted to tie things together anyway. So like Earth Mother, there's a statue in at Cahokia that comes, I'm sorry, at Spiro that comes from Missouri area, or things like from stone that comes in that area, that is also called Earth Mother. And so, and that was used kind of, especially in the Southeast, this idea that there was a Southern ceremonial complex where everyone shared the same religious beliefs. But when we look at it more deeply, we understand, like, okay, well, some of the iconography may be similar, but the beliefs around that iconography are vastly different. And so when looking at, because there's definitely some interactions between the East and sites in the West, because that's how, you know, maize and everything came to the East. So there's definitely interactions, and the Southwest kind of functioned as I don't want to say a middleman, but kind of a conduit for that exchange and everything like that. But it's important to remember that a lot of the early terminology and stuff that archaeologists were using that kind of still, unfortunately, has kind of a hold on some topics, were, you know, misconceptions about what the indigenous religion was and things like that. And so that would be my kind of one like caveat when studying these larger trends of religion. I think there definitely is kind of cohesion, and people are sharing ideas and beliefs and everything like that.
Well, I think it's also important to know, I don't agree with Hancock that, to me, when religion traveled, it kept changing.
Yeah.
It was never like the people just gave everybody pure. Hell no, I don't agree with that in any kind of way for any religion. This is, to me, really obvious in Indo-European religions, because the Romans, the Greeks, you know, the Germans, the Nordic, the people from England, the Celts, the people from Iberia and stuff, they have all, in a sense, shared language and religion, and yet they are not all the same. In fact, some of them are very different. Yeah,
and that's the big thing too. Even when, so just talking about like southeastern Louisiana and modern day tribes, there is like, they have a large influence from Christianity, but a lot of them won't say God. It's the creator. And because that comes back to older older beliefs in southeastern Louisiana, southeastern North America, about their religious beliefs and things like that have kind of melded together into a different
just like I had Cory read in our video last week or last 2 weeks ago about how the stuff changes for the different religions. But when it comes to you're talking about the Great Spirit, in a sense. When you talk about creator, it's almost always related to the Great Spirit. Although creator can also be the raven, it can also be, you know, something else. But my point is that a lot of it, when people say like the Great Spirit, I had him read my opinion. There's like 3 versions of that are common. Like one version is that no gender, it's almost like a force. And then another one is gender, but it could be both genders, it could be whatever. And the other one is just male. Mm-hmm. And so, but like you said, some of those, especially I think, which could just be a guess, but I think that the one where it's a force is the oldest. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and that's even within, so in southern Louisiana, where I grew up and everything like that, there's the earth. I don't like some people label it as myth, but I don't like labeling anything as myth. I just say stories or tales or something like that.
And then you get me who labels everything as myth, but go ahead.
But one of the stories for the earth diver is that the upper world birds, usually first eagle or first hawk, decided that they wanted to create land, and a number of like a pigeon and a dove tried to get it. They couldn't get land from the bottom of the ocean, and then it kind of changes. For some people it was a duck. Growing up, I always heard a crawfish, and there's also a turtle. But those were the creatures that kind of put the land together for people eventually emerged from. But that's even within, that's just southern Louisiana that it changes that much. Now,
Oh,
the,
yeah.
the
Oh, yeah,
creature it
definitely.
does, and that has a lot of significance for each person or tribe or things like that.
And just to even more fine point that, right? So in Native American language, then the Dane languages, which are to do with the Tlingit in Canada, and then all the way down to the Navajo in the Southwest America, have the same culture. And they even have similar sort of beliefs, but not one of them says the same thing when it comes to where they got their language. They all, even though they all speak the same, version of the language, not one of them agrees on how they got the language. Not one of them agrees exactly on what exactly, like they said, the Great Spirit. Even though they all have a Great Spirit, it's all a little different. So that's why also I think it's so ridiculous when anyone says that one pure thing was given to all. That's not even true with the stuff we do know.
Yeah, and I think that's another big thing that a lot of an issue that indigenous people face, especially when dealing with archaeology and things like that, is some people may even have this really great mindset that they're like, okay, I really want to help indigenous people with their archaeology and things like that, but they box indigenous people into all thinking the same way, and they're like, and that's an issue because indigenous people are just as diverse as everyone else. They can disagree on things. And so because of that, when you're still boxing people into that kind of mindset and things like that, and when you do that, that's still harmful for those indigenous people and things like that.
And in philosophy, it's straw manning them. When you take and you make them something that they're not, and you act as if it is true.
Yeah, and so that's one of the. And some people don't even do it with like ill intent. They just aren't realizing that they are, still boxing indigenous people into, one steel mindset, where a lot of beliefs are different. Some people are like, some tribes are more open about showing things related to NACRA, for instance. So sometimes some tribes are really restrictive of things like that, and that each their own choices, that they're the descendant communities, they can do whatever like that. But even when people are like, oh, we shouldn't even ask tribes if they want to have something, if they want to have something done with their NACRA stuff or something like that, because all tribes are against anything related to NACRA related analysis or anything like that. But you're still boxing them in, like, let them decide for themselves. Because there's plenty of tribes who, depending on the kind of work you want to do, would still be more than willing to work with you on it and things like that. And I think the kind of going back into the thing I had with Chaco Canyon, like the Navajo, for instance, they don't even they have bad stories about Chaco Canyon because they say a king lived there and they didn't want to be ruled by a king. So these whole arguments are like, that people are just like really, and it's sad because it's in North America mostly, just really have no idea about indigenous people in North America. Is that, just because they didn't have an empire doesn't mean they couldn't have if they wanted to. They just, a large reason for it could be they just didn't want it. They wanted to live the lifestyle they lived and things like that. It's not that, what must have happened to them for them to not be able to do it? It was okay. What if they just decided, hey, I want to do that?
That's not the ideal way
now. So
I don't want to live in where someone else has complete authority over me, and I have to, be hand and foot to the elites. So there's a big saying actually with, at least in the Eastern Woodlands and things like that, and that people voted with their feet. There's plenty of times we have seen a site try to get like upper echelons, and then the elites start like gathering most of the materials and things like that, and people just left. Like, no, I'm not going to do this. I'll just leave. And then I get questions like, why didn't they establish an empire? I was like, well, because they didn't want to be under an empire.
Because every time somebody tried, everybody left.
Yeah. So like,
I'm all for that.
Yeah. So it's just this idea that that the indigenous people lacked something here or had to be taught something here, when really they were just like, no, I'm not about that. I don't want, like, you know, who today would go, yes, I want to be, you know, indebted to an elite where I constantly have to put all of my effort into them. And they had the full capability of getting up and walking away.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, like, what? So that's a lot of, I love getting that question, just because it's the answer is usually just, you know, I can do a deep analysis of it, or I can just say, because I didn't want to be someone ruling over them. That's
Exactly.
so, and you do get, I mean, there are occasions of where, you know, there's a theory with Moundville, which y'all probably be interested in because of the religious aspect of it. So Moundville is kind of not the greatest name, first off, because it just named
You
that
tell me
mountain.
where it is, because I
In
do
Alabama.
know Alabama. Yeah.
Yeah, Moundville is in Alabama. It's very close.
I have knowledge about where the stuff is at, so
Yeah.
I know where Poverty Point is at, but I mean, all the different ones, even Monk's Mountain. I think, is that Missouri? Or am I wrong?
That's near St. Louis.
I wasn't.
Monk's Mountain is Cahokia.
No.
So Moundville is a site with this. There's a thing that becomes very prominent in mound building societies, and that's to have, you know, a circular or semicircular mound structures going around, and then a central plaza area. And Moundville has that going on. And you have a lot of iconography coming from there. The hand and eye that we see a lot of, iconography. There's a theory.
Oh, really? I've only seen the hand. There's a hand with an eye in it.
Yeah, hand and eye. Yeah. There's you also have Thunderbird iconography.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Of this iconography. There's,
speaking of which, to me, that comes from the Pacific Northwest, which also originally comes from the Pacific, or I should say the far eastern China, that area right there, and northern Siberia right there.
There's a lot of theories on Moundville, but one potential theory is that a lot of Moundville was very interested, because there's a lot of iconography for it, that was very interested in portals. Portals to the lower world in particular. And one of the theories is based on some of the archaeological evidence, was that the spiritual elites at Moundville were getting so kind of out there with their ceremonies, trying to open these portals and everything like that, that people kind of got freaked out and left. So that is one of the theories with Moundville. And there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of portal iconography, and there's this strict kind of hierarchy between elites and non-elites. We see that off of some of the work that
do you find any spiritual elites? In other words, like, I've seen a thing that said that shamans in general for the people, and sorcerers are more for the state. Have you seen any religious things that are hierarchical?
Yeah, so it changes based on a few things. So in Moundville, because it was definitely influenced from Cahokia, they're thinking that it's more of a state hierarchical system, just because Cahokia has this idea of it probably could have kind of constitutes a state level organization. And we see this strict dietary correlation, or comparison between the two, where the elites are getting just much better cuts of meat, much better food, and then the non-elites are also on the other side of the river for the most part of the time, and only being invited over for a ritual feasting or ceremonies things like that.
On the other side of the river, wow.
And then, but places like Spiro, for instance, which one caveat with Spiro is a Mississippian period site, but it is not a Mississippian site. So that happens. That argument. It's archaeologists were not the best with naming schemes at the time of periods and things. But at that point, it looks like a lot of people were gathering, and there's this awesome kind of, it was an enclosed inside of the mound was the mortuary chamber, or the great chamber, where a lot of different statues or figurines and items were put inside of there.
What
and the
kind of
thought
figurines?
process, I'm sorry?
What kind of figurines?
Different ones. There's even there's one Earth Mother that was there, and then there were several kneeling warriors. One of them thinks it may be Redhorn, which was kind of a heroic figure, but they think they may have been punishing Redhorn because there was an extensive drought, and we think that the idea that people were coming here trying to reset the weather. That actually happens at Poverty Point too. One of the theories is that shortly after Mound A is built, which is probably reminiscent of the Earth Diver story that I was talking about earlier, is that shortly after that...
You do know the Earth Diver is not limited to the Americas.
Yeah.
Which to me, it's such a... There's multiple things.
Yeah.
That to me, I'm just saying, to me, I feel like I do agree that there is no hyper-diffusion. There's no, like, one culture did everything. To me, it's like 15 cultures did stuff, and then from there, it just diversified.
Yeah.
Diversified. There's no correlation to a direct
one. Yeah.
I look really hard at the religious aspects.
Yeah.
So even though I think a lot of this stuff is actually older than people think. I think a lot of it's older than 5,000 years.
Yeah.
But not 11,000.
Yeah. But right after near the end of the construction of Mound A at Poverty Point, the site people call abandoned or collapsed, but really, if the site did its function, then they just, because there's an idea that it was actually, there was also environmental issues, so people were thinking that it may be another attempt to kind of restabilize everything. And Spyro seems to be kind of something similar, where there's an extended period of drought, like 150 years, I think, of drought. And so people were routinely going there.
But didn't a lot of them align themselves either from or to water sources?
Yeah, most mounds, especially the, like I said, in lower Mississippi River Valley, a lot of early mounds are very close and adjacent. Poverty Point is near the Bayou Mason, and then Spyro is near the Arkansas River. Cahokia is near the Mississippi River. So, you've got all of these that are put really close to these river sources.
I don't think that's an accident to you.
Oh, no.
I'm just saying, it's the fact that you see the same behavior, which is a little odd if one or two do it, but the fact that multiple of them do it, I think that makes it no longer
majority of mound sites are located near water. Not even the smaller ones are still near creeks or something like that. The Fushmaline archaeological culture gets its name because it's near the Fushmaline Creek. It's the sites were near that. But at Spyro, you have these opportunities and things like that, but there seems to be a much more organized religious aspect, where the religious people had a lot more control or authority at that point. But then the Hassani, which are northeast Texas, that are kind of proto-historic or just pre-contact to contact period, they aren't living in this idealized, close-knit group. There seems to be a lot of people off doing their own thing, and then there's a regional spiritual specialist that if people need to, they can come to. So you see a variation where you have these strict hierarchy where people who are the religious leaders are near the top, and then you have somewhere everyone's doing their own thing, and if they just need a spiritual advisor or something like that, they'll go to him, but he's not, controlling the aspects of everyone around him or her at all times. And I think that's a big thing, is that it varies from group to group, and then from period to period. And so that's a big thing to remember as well. But there's a lot of the other thing that a lot of people don't realize with mound building and things like that is that this was an activity also that brought people together. That it didn't have to just be a long time ago. People thought, not a long time, in the 50s and 60s, a lot of people thought that in order to be able to build a mound, you needed, a strict hierarchy of, you had to have a manager, and then you have things like that. But we see that, a lot of these earliest mounds and things like that just came from, community building activities, people working together. And Watson Brake, which is one of the oldest mound complexes in North America, was.
But isn't that interesting in the fact that it's also a circular? So it's it's multiple things. It's both a circular, and in the way that it segments the stuff, couldn't it almost be like portions, in other words, like directions? All I'm saying in a loose way, like east, south, north.
And so that's what I mentioned earlier. The earliest Middle Archaic mounds don't. The Late Archaic, you start seeing that the cardinal directions orientation, but the earliest ones in the Middle Archaic, you don't see that. You don't see any type of cosmological or cardinal direction alignment. But they were Watson Brake. It seems to be like they were sedentary the whole time. They built that area there. Now it did flood occasionally, and they probably relocated during the flooding season and then went right back. But building these mound structures was very much a community-driven aspect. And then later on, you have mound structures that are, instead of, the initial process is basket loaded. But then you get these aspects where a structure is built on a mound, and then it's ritualistically burnt, and then a new one's built on top, and then it's just continuously done. So you have another, you're on top of the basket loads, another set of mound structuring stratification going on top of that. And so,
did you know that in Ukraine, that the right before, probably, I don't know if it's 7,000 to 6,000, something like that, they were burning houses after a family. Like, in other words, everybody dies over it, and then they burn it, and then I think it's believed that they would do it as a memorable. Now nobody, in a sense, can live there. It's theirs. It's memorying of only them. So I was wondering if they did that. Maybe like when a chieftain or a spiritual leader or a special person dies, they burn it, or the family of that, or whatever, something.
That is one theory with that. There's also the idea that the structures themselves had a life period, and so when they came to the end of their life, the structure itself would be burned down as part of the ending of the structure's life and things like that. So that's another aspect of it too. A lot of oral traditions kind of change about what exactly, and unfortunately archaeology doesn't have the exact fine date details to get that yet. So that is one possibility, is that when the ending of an era type thing,
right.
And
that's what I wasn't saying. In other words, I'm not saying that that's the same behavior, the one in Ukraine.
Yeah.
At all. I don't know that it has any connection other than the behavior. I'm just saying that after the family died, you burn it, and then no one else lives. That's only that family's memorial, and almost sense.
Yeah. And I think
that's what it is.
And I think the other thing to really is really important too when talking about mound building people is that objects themselves had histories and stories and journeys and things like that, and those are really significant as well. It wasn't just this is a projectile point. Some projectile points were huge that could not have any function whatsoever because they were too big and they would break way too easily. And those had their own stories and places and things like that. And so that marked an important portion of for that culture and things like that. It's not just that, people could have their stories, but also the objects themselves could have their own stories and histories and things like that.
Isn't it funny that the word culture means like all kinds of, or any almost, but then how he uses culture, like Hancock, is like it's some special thing.
Yeah.
To me, it just means that what people did. I mean, they did this, they did that. Okay, that's their culture. I mean,
that's the thing too. And the other thing too is that Hancock sees this like almost very linear, not only just linear progression, but like that cultures can't adapt and change and things like that. But once again, with we're using mound builders for an example and things like that. The earliest mounds weren't mortuary mounds in the lower Mississippi Valley and things like that. They weren't mortuary mounds. There was no evidence for any type of burials in there, anything like that.
Were they besides being temples, were they elite burials? I mean, not elite burials. I mean, elite housing.
No.
Okay.
So at Poverty Point, for instance, all the mound structures, it's like Mound A, the grandest one.
Yeah.
It was originally, a little background on Poverty Point. In the 60s, they thought the Mesoamerican people had, left Mesoamerica and came up and built it. That's not accurate. Then it was that it had to be a chiefdom level organization. Like it had to have a chief over it to build it and everything. That wasn't accurate either. It was hunter-gatherers.
But you do agree hunter-gatherers can have a chieftain? Because I do. I mean, if you're saying that they doesn't, then I guess we just disagreed.
No.
I absolutely think you can have a chieftain and still be hunter-gatherers.
The difference. So when I'm like the term like the archaeological chiefdom level society is where the office holds the power, not the person. So like in a hunter-gatherer society, we see it a lot of times where like, someone has achieved the rank of, the leader and everything like that.
Right.
Where in a like more, stereotypical chiefdom level society, someone achieved that level and then someone can just go to that, get into that same position and automatically have the same level of control as the person who came before them.
Okay.
Because that's a position held power instead of an individually led power. But yeah, it's seen a lot through the.
I see what you're saying. I thought you were saying there's no chiefs and hunter-gatherers. I'm like,
no. It's that. No, it's that the type of chief or the type of power that those people have.
You mean inherited power is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like we usually say achieved versus ascribed. So ascribed is the position holds the power, or achieved. You see this a lot more in hunter-gatherers. Is that that person for whatever reason has achieved that level of status. But with Poverty Point, the Mound A, which is this huge, giant, second largest mound in North America, no one's living on it. You don't have any elite person living on it. And if you look,
is there a structure that's there for the gods or whatever?
There's the timber circles or the wood hinges that may have cosmological alignment, or maybe we're not sure if it's gathering locations for people to do ceremonies in, or if it's supposed to be some type of relationship where the deities come down and interact with the people. But at Poverty Point, for instance, looking at if you look at the like environmental factors, Poverty Point is a terrible place to build a site. It is it has a lot of fish. It has no stone, and being a late archaic site where pottery isn't prevalent throughout North America, it's rarely anywhere. Stone is one of your most important assets, but there you're not getting any stone. So
don't they have some heating stones or pseudo ceramic pieces, like fake stones or something?
So those are Poverty Point objects. We call them PPOs. Those they have a multitude of probably uses. There's like basic form ones that are they do this and it makes the kind of like diamond shape, and then those were probably used for. But then other ones are very ornate. They have different figurines on them or different iconography on them and things like that. And we think those possibly were more spiritualistic or ritualistic because we find them in particular locations throughout the eastern woodlands, so we think they may be strategically brought to those places as like possibly even part of, you're taking part of the power or whatever with Poverty Point and relocating it somewhere else for like your local needs or something like that. But the stone that we see there, and this was what my master's thesis on, was very crappy quality. It's a lot of it. About 30% of all the stone at Poverty Point is not good material, and it was some of the furthest away material. There's much better material closer and easier to get to.
Really, and they used. I know that it wasn't the copper showed up there was not from the area there, and it wasn't from the Great Lakes, right? It was from
So there's the copper looks like it's from Georgia, the Georgia area. Now, not all the copper has been analyzed though, so just so it could be, right. And so
there could be more than one source. In other words.
Yeah, and so just for an example, the stone sources is Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia. Wow. Yeah, all those different places are having modern day or stone showing up at Poverty Point.
All those were all the same culture. You don't know? Graham Hancock said it was.
Yeah. But there's a really not great quality raw materials called Burlington that shows up there. It shows up at Cahokia too, but archaeologists originally identified it as something different because the comparison of because it was so great, nice quality when it shows up at Cahokia, that they actually thought it was a different stone at first before realizing that it was the same.
So is it polished or something? So it looks like a gemstone?
There just has less inclusions in it at Cahokia, and it's also called Crescent Hill at Cahokia, and it's much easier to nap.
Are they also possibly choosing it for its color or something? Or
it is white, so it is. So it is possibly we have a lot of evidence of different groups choosing stuff for color, and that's one of the aspects I looked at in my analysis for the Poverty Point assemblages. But the raw material there, we'll see later, where particular raw materials are like Covenant because of quality or the looks of it. So Novaculite is this really, really fine material that feels different and it can be translucent and everything like that. Later, when you start having, economic leaders or elites and things like that, they will hoard that material because it's, the highest quality, the highest returns on it and everything. At Poverty Point, we don't see that. It's kind of an even dispersal of stone of each type throughout the whole site. So my kind of hypothesis with the why there's so much low quality stuff is I flint nap, and a lot of modern day flint nappers, usually when they're initially teaching people things and they're not worried about the finished product.
By the way, flint napping is when you make stone tools, for people that don't know.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure because I know, you and me, Jeff, we could probably talk about a lot of stuff and be on the same page or close to it, but I'm pretty sure everyone else is like, "The heck's that mean?"
Yeah. So that's the reduction process in making stone tools.
Right.
And so when you're not worried about the completed item, a lot of today, both traditional indigenous people, but Europeans who do flint napping, and everyone who does flint napping, they usually receive a lower quality piece of material to learn the basic principles of it.
Right.
Of how you would do it.
That makes sense.
And we see this kind of throughout the Poverty Point site. So my kind of theory, and archaeologists have disagreed with me. I know people disagreeing in archaeology. Who would have thought that it's community building activities where you've got if you've got people coming from all the way from Indiana, Georgia, and Missouri or Arkansas coming together in one location. Well, based on some oral traditions and things like that, is that you do an activity together to kind of, you all using the same raw material, you're all working, you're more of a connected people at that point instead of just, a bunch of different groups that are.
Do you think it was like
ideas.
a potlatch or a powwow that they did this, or do you think they migrated like a Mecca for a spiritual reason? Or it obviously, if you said they don't have good items, they're obviously not coming there to get items, right?
Yeah, no. So I learned archaeology under Ed Jackson, who worked at the site in the 80s, and he originally thought it may have been a trade fair location based on some ethnographic evidence. He has changed his mind since then. I know archaeologists doing that crazy, but he it looks like there was a population probably around 1,000 or so. The environment is rich enough to have around that many people, thanks to the fishing and everything like that.
Right.
It's Louisiana, there's a lot of fish. But there's times when greater numbers from all over would come and kind of stay and do probably either mound building activities. Like I said, once again, those are a lot of communal building activities, or participate in something else, and then they would return back to their areas where their regional locations. And that's how we know that. So Mound A was probably built between 30 and 90 days. For reference of how big Mound A is, it's about 33,000 dump trucks worth of dirt.
Wow.
And that was built somewhere in between 30 and 90 days based on environmental analysis of the soils, because we don't
Was
have.
it done like an equinoxes or some kind of with the sun or the seasons or something?
We're not sure, because unfortunately radiocarbon dating can't get that accurate to find. Now we do think like it was built over a small pool of water, so that's why the idea that it's possibly
Also even built over water, which is important too, because even in Mesoamerica, not saying it's the exact same, but even in Mesoamerica, they built some of the pyramids over water sources.
Yeah. And see, this is why the idea that they think it's an earth diver tale, because if you're using Poverty Point to try to reset because of the environmental issues that are that they're facing at the time, well, if your faith belief is that the earth diver is what created the earth and everything like that.
Now I have to make him read the Earth Diver. See what you did?
But it also, if you look at Poverty Point, Mound A, there's erosion, so it's not in the exact shape it was before, but it kind of looks like a bird with its wings spread. So you have this extended wingspan that comes down, and then you're narrow out, and then it flares out kind of like a tail feathers, and then there's a slight raised part right above the wings. So people have also said that that is ideal as a bird, earth diver.
You think that's like a bird diving?
I don't know if it's a bird diving, because one of the theories is that a duck was one of the creatures that went down.
Which would be a bird.
Yeah, and picked up. But the others is, every part of the story for the earth diver stories start with that a flying creature in the upper world, usually an eagle or a hawk, something like that, is the one that decided that there should be there should be land, there should be a world for creation to come from.
I appreciate bringing this up. I've delved a little bit into Earth Diver, but truly not much.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought it up.
So with it being built over water, built in such a short period of time, and it possibly reminiscent of a bird figure, it seems like this especially kind of correlates to the other evidence that we have for Poverty Point of being this, location where people were gathering. It had a sedentary population there, but people were coming and gathering there to kind of hopefully reset this environmental degradation that they were experiencing at the time.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And so one of the theories is that there were pilgrims leaving Poverty Point and bringing people in. The other is that, you know, we're just over an extended a period of time, you know, reached other populations. You know, like, have you heard about that? What they're doing over there in, you know, Louisiana? Do you want to go do that?
Which one do you find is the most persuasive?
Ooh, I personally, I personally believe that it was probably for the groups that were further out, it was probably some type of pilgrimage activity because they're just so far out. But I think like in Arkansas, Mississippi, and Tennessee, they probably were already in relations, like had communications with the groups that were doing it. So when the initial people started building Poverty Point, if you know, they would have just heard about it being built from, you know, the normal say, and not so much, you know, being spiritually invited by, you know, a pilgrim figure.
Did you hear about in Siberia where they had a person going all the way to I think it's the Golden Mountains or the of Siberia, central Siberia, and one of the shamans they tracked actually came from far eastern Russia.
Oh,
so
wow.
I don't know if it was like 2,000 miles or but like outrageous.
Yeah, it's there's evidence that Poverty Point at least got some people in from, or at least some materials in as far as away about 1,100 kilometers away. But interestingly enough, and this is part of like why I'm continuously doing research on Poverty Point and hunter-gatherers, is the Fushmaline archaeological culture that I was describing earlier have some really amazing stone, and it's really easily identifiable and things like that. But for whatever reason, we're not participating in Poverty Point, the Poverty Point culture. There's no items shared between the two.
Wow.
There's the Poverty Point is, you know, the more iconic mound structures made from basket making, where Fushmaline is these you know, midden mounds that were created. So they're completely different. I was
going to ask, do you feel like the midden mounds, or I don't like to call them, I call it shell mounds, but do you think the shell, that's my opinion, but do you think that shell mounds and the earth mounds have any relation, or do you think they're separate extensions of ideas?
So two things. One, the Fushmaline mounds aren't shell.
They're not shell?
No, they're
what are they?
Dark, rich, black earth that was mixed in with artifacts, but there's not a lot of shell in them.
Okay, so about that, but I was also saying, the reason I say because California, both coasts, from New Brunswick, Canada, all the way down to Florida, also into South America some, and then from Canada all the way down to California. There's tons of shell. Well, actually, it even goes to Mexico too. I remember now.
So my advisor at the University of Oklahoma is actually Dr. Asa Randall. Is actually he does a lot of work on the St. Johns River Valley, so the big shell mounds in Florida, and they're definitely seeing these mound structures and seeing, you know, these huge, like massive,
like Mound City. Have you seen that one?
Yeah.
Come on.
that you know, these are definitely intentional. And another reason that you can see, there's also an orientation. So, you know, there's the kind of like C-shaped orientation. The topography of the largest mounds is the same. Each section, like there's one each in the same location. It's like the north section is usually the like medium. Then the northeast section is always where there's the most shells, and then it tapers off to medium, and then at the other ring at the bottom is always the least amount, kind of tapering out. And that's at all each of the three largest shell mounds in Georgia and Florida have that same topography to them. So there's no way for me at least, for me to say, okay, they accidentally made each of the largest shell mounds the exact same. Like that's, you also have a lot of
shell rings too, right?
Yeah.
And shell mounds, just so you know, or at least in my studies, shell mounds and shell rings are also in the Jom of Japan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the pottery, the first pottery in the Americas, is very similar to Jom pottery in Japan, like the motifs, yeah. So they used to think that someone came from 6,000 years ago, came from Japan. There was at one time, and then came all the way down. I don't think that's actually what happened, but I think it's way more complicated than that.
Yeah. But you also have some of the earliest the earliest pottery in North America. You have the Stalling Island and Orange pottery. Those are also kind of intentionally located within the shell rings going on there. So with that and everything like that, and there's even an evidence where shell mounds are later also used for burials. They kind of change from time to time, but they're used for burials. But there's some that the shell mounds, when they got their flooding and things like that, that the individuals were staked into the ground, and there's different beliefs about why. There's ideas about why this possibly is. One was they were worried about flooding washing everything out. Another is that they were really afraid of reanimation.
Wouldn't it be almost like vampires? Because I know that there's especially in Mesoamerica, but I think other places too, there's a shape-shifting belief among Native Americans that they can in a sense be aware something, where it's not just werewolf, but aware tiger or leopard or even a duck or something, but different animals. I'm saying
and so there's a lot of There's actually a Choctaw story of where a deer turns a hunter into another deer, and the mother is so upset about the son being turned into a deer that she has the other hunters in the village rip all the deer skin off of him, and it kills him. But she'd rather him die than live as a deer. So that's a lot of shapeshifter stories. But with all that, there's a lot of interesting things with shell mounds and thing like that. But you see that the people who are participating in Poverty Point are coming from these shell mounds, but their culture vastly different, but maybe their religious beliefs or something like that aligned at some point, and so they were participating in Poverty Point, even if their mound building culture was drastically different. And that's another important thing to remember too. People can have a similar ideological belief.
Oh, see, but that is what I think. So right, but see, you're just explaining how because I say that, or I feel a lot of this stuff is loosely connected. Like for me, period. My own thinking that Kurgans, shell mounds, earth mounds, pyramids, all this stuff to me is not really special in the sense of like how Graham Hancock or ever think of it. I think of these just outcroppings of religious beliefs that were somewhat shared. And then, in other words, what I'm saying is, if you believe that all your ancestors are in the sky and your gods are in the sky or some relation to that, putting something really high up is like reaching them or more sacred towards them. So, in other words, what I'm saying is, so it's not like, like you were saying about doing the land. It's not that the land to me itself, the pyramid itself is so important. It's the concept to me that would motivate to build this. Now, I've heard archaeologists say, well, it also could be for grandiose of a person or grandiose for a culture, like, look what we did. And I feel like, yeah, and it still doesn't preclude it being also religious.
Yeah. Oh no. And that was I mean, archaeologists are coming more, open about the multitude of meanings of one thing. Something doesn't have to be, just resemble one thing.
Well, that's what I think in general. Me and Cory have talked about this when we've read through archaeology and stuff, and they'll say this theory, that theory, that theory. And I say, like Cory one time said with Mesopotamia, well, isn't that all kind of true? And I said, in my opinion, yes. I think that yes.
Yeah.
Did they have a small outpost? Yes. Did they try to take over an area? Yes. Did they do massive trade but didn't take over there? Yes. Okay, they did all that.
Yeah, and that was I kind of argued that with that at the poverty point with my kind of final thing is that because originally it was a Mesoamerican, possibly Olmec group came up and built it. Then it had to be a chiefdom, and then it was a trade fair, and then it was a vacant ceremonial center, and then it was it's a ceremonial center with religious leaders at it. And I kind of got to it, and I was like, okay, well, why can't it be? It wasn't a chieftainal society because and it wasn't the Olmecs because we had proof of that. But from the other stuff. But it acting as a trade fair or a ceremonial location. Why can't it be both? Like, why couldn't people go there?
Totally agree.
To exchange things and go there to
You do know that there's not saying that archaeologists do this. I'm just saying all people have this tendency, a fallacy of black and white thinking, that it's either one thing or another. Like Graham Hancock, it's either his theory or archaeologists are wrong.
Yeah.
Like, what? Wrong.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna have to go. I'm kind of getting
no problem. You've stayed longer than I thought you would. I hope you had fun.
I did. One thing I will, because I know you're interested in religion, so I'd give you another resource for indigenous religion is look up wedge mouth in Native American iconography.
Okay.
Wedge mouth is believed to be a deity, a shapeshifter deity, and he is usually kind of identified by wedge-shaped mouth, where the everyday person.
You think
would
that
have
relates to a moon,
mouth.
like the crescent moon? Because what does that bring us up? Is because people will say sky deity. Like I look up this stuff too, but there's two different kinds of sky deities to me. There's daytime and nighttime, not the same deities.
I don't. For wedge mouth, I can't remember why one of the archaeologists think that it is identifying him as wedge mouth. I think it's like an object specific thing. There's some like his mouth
like a
is
snake or mouth or something.
Well, he can change into a snake, so it's more like a he can change because he can change. He changes into wedge mouth changes into a bunch of different things.
So he doesn't just have one kind; he can have multiple things. Yeah,
he changes into a multitude of different. He's a shapeshifter, and he bestows the forked stick, which is another kind of iconographic special thing to people. And that's a lot of the depiction of the artwork at Spyro is about Wedgemouth bestowing power to a potential leader. We don't know if it's the same figure, but it looks like you can. What's really cool about some of the artwork in Spyro is there's a masked figure with antlers coming off of his head, and there was actually an artifact just uncovered that is a mask with antlers coming off of it. So it's really cool to find the actual artifact.
Oh yeah,
depicted in the iconography and things like that. So we also think that was actually worn by someone to be like marking the spiritual assessor of Wedgemouth and things like that.
Right, but like in 9,000 years ago in Israel and I think Jordan, there's these masks, and they're made of stone. They couldn't have been actually worn, so they're like symbols of probably maybe wood or some other. I doubt that, because some of them also like they have where they have eye holes, but there's no eyes. It's just they just carve, but they didn't carve all the way through, so nobody can see it. And it's like, super thick, couple inches thick. There's no way anyone would actually wear this thing.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, because the reason I'm bringing this up, because you said they wore it. So I know that sometimes I was saying, like I know then, those are symbolic. Those are not probably worn.
Yeah. The thing with the Great Mortuary Chamber in at Spyro was, before it was unfortunately looted. It was, because it was enclosed fabric, the clothing of the people were still in there. Unfortunately, the looters, when they dug into it, were like, oh, clothing's not going to make us any money, and threw it off to the side. But because of that, Spyro is kind of unique in that because of that, some material still survived, fabric wise and clothing and dress wear, that we don't have at a lot of other archaeological sites in the Southeast. And so that's one added kind of information point for Spyro, is that the Great Mortuary Chamber was completely enclosed and everything. So we have that added kind of information about it that we don't have. The other thing that you've seen, the engraved shells and everything like that, that kind of pop up. About 80% of all the Mississippian period engraved shells that is in eastern Oklahoma actually is from Spyro. It is actually the largest kind of was kind of like the largest kind of repository for those shells and everything like that. So that's another big thing.
Well, I appreciate you coming and telling. You definitely are welcome to come again, and I love talking about this stuff.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. I just want to close on like one more thing.
Okay, go ahead. I'm not trying to cut you off.
No. As people, as new archaeological discoveries are made and everything like that, I really, push people to say the term rediscovered instead of discovered, because, in a lot of these cases, the local population was fully aware of the site, right. Or even, 1,000 years ago, the population was aware of it, and we just forgot, and people forgot for a little bit. So I hate saying the term they discovered, Machu Picchu or something, no, the local population knew it was up there. So you can say archaeologically discovered or rediscovered, but I encourage people to not use the word just discovered, but to either say rediscovered or an archaeological discovery.
I'm cool with that. Just like I heard someone say that some native population wanted to call the things the people's items or something, or belongings, and not artifacts, because artifacts sounds like some sort of a removed thing. I have no problem stating that either. Like someone said, what do you think about it? I think that we should try to watch what we say depending on other people. If it's not unreasonable, why not? I mean, to me.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
I really appreciate you. Everyone, you need to go and check out his channel and give this support.
I really appreciate it. Thank you all so much for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Right. Just as a technical point before you go, I will remove you from the main video. If you want to just take a second or whatever, make sure that your file has finished uploading. I don't know if there's a way for you to check on there on your end, but
so I'm going to put the blog in this because we video it and then we put it up later. It's not live. And so when I put up the video, just so everyone knows, I'm going to put a link in there, or not a link, my blog on Jeffrey, and then you can see where to get his YouTube. He has 3 videos. You should watch them all. They're great. And I know you'll get better. But I think the better that you're going to get is you're going to feel comfortable just being you. Because I know that it's hard, when you start, just be you. You know what makes you great? You.
Yeah. I
Well, I'm
appreciate
just
that.
saying that I feel like people want to be something else, like me. I just try to be me. I don't try to be any other whatever.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good advice. But
Yeah.
all right, I appreciate it, y'all. Thank y'all so much.
You
All
bet.
right. Well, we're gonna go ahead and read stuff about the mound builders and now on Earth Diver because you brought that up, and I like talking about that stuff, and so I actually had only skimmed it cursorily, so I'm ready to learn some right now, anyways.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. Take care. So go ahead and first read the Earth Diver, just because I think that it, as he said, it sort of relates to the other mounds. So I think it's important to know what the heck that is. I sort of already knew because I knew about different creation myths and realized that they're shared across the world. That kind of was interesting to me. But like I said, I didn't really go into it because I got so much other shit I'm doing.
Right. So I guess we'll read this then.
Yeah.
You want to do mound builders first?
No, I want to hear about
Earth
the
Diver
Earth
first.
Diver first. It's shorter.
Okay.
And also because, like I said, the mound builders kind of relate to that mythology, so it's good then to know that.
Fair. All right. Earth Diver. The Earth Diver is a common character in various traditional creation myths. In these stories, a supreme being usually sends an animal, most often a type of bird, but also crustaceans, insects, and fishes in some narratives, into the primal waters to find bits of sand or mud with which to build habitable land. Some scholars interpret these myths psychologically, while others interpret them cosmogonically.
I don't know what that is.
I don't know what that word means. Okay.
So don't ask me. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm guessing it relates to like larger
The
things
cosmos,
of religion,
yeah.
like
Yeah. I don't know.
cosmology, I guess, or I don't know.
Cosmogonically, I don't even know how to pronounce it. Anyway, in both cases, emphasis is placed on beginnings emanating from the depths. Motif distribution, according to the Gudmund Hat and Tristram P. Coffin, Earth Diver myths are common in Native American folklore among the following populations: the Shoshone, Fox people, Blackfoot, Chippewayan, Nueti, Yokuts of California, Mandan, Hitatsa, Cheyenne, Arapaho, Ojibwe, Yuki, and Cherokee. American anthropologist Gladys Reichard located the distribution of the motif across all parts of North America, save for the extreme north, northeast, and southwest. In a 1977 study, anthropologist Victor Barnow surmised that the Earth Diver motif appeared in hunting-gathering societies, mainly among northerly groups such as the Hare, Dogrib, Casca, Beaver, Carrier, Chippewayan, Sarcee, Cree, and Montagnais. Montagnais. I think that's how that's pronounced.
Hey.
Similar tales are also found among the Chukchi and Yugahir, the Tartars and the Finnic traditions, as well as among the Buryat and Samoyed.
And those are Siberians.
In addition, the Earth Diver motif also exists in narratives from Eastern Europe, namely Romani, Romanian, Slavic, namely the Bulgarian, Polish, Ukrainian, and Belarusian, and Lithuanian mythological traditions.
So Slavic, so definitely Indo-European.
Right.
And then, of course, it's two languages at least. Actually, it's three, because the Burats I think are part of the trans-Eurasian languages with the Mongols and the Turks, and if I remember right, that's either that or it's with the Asian with the I think it's that one, but off the top of my head. But and then also the Finnic, Uralic languages is another language family, and then the Indo-European is another language family. But it is evident that the Trans-Eurasian started in North China, or somewhere close to that, and then it's probably Lake Balka or even somewhere in central Siberia, which that still is very close to Asia. China part is where the Finnic comes from. Because see, Finnic people have haplogroup N, and haplogroup N is from China.
Okay.
And when the haplogroup N spread, it spread pottery. So the fact that you have the Finnic people who also come from China in a sense through Siberia to Europe, Northern Europe, and then you have the same general area is where all the Eurasian ones, which is, like I said, it's Korean, Japanese, Turkic, Mongolic, and a few other things that came off the top of my head. But anyway, so people don't realize how many languages came from this very, very small area, which I think, like I said, is important to grasp that when you hear these myths, because the same central, it's like, I think 90% of the people from the Americas have DNA of Q, and Q comes from central Siberia.
Okay.
So these, I'm just making a comment. So the fact that they go and then they have this belief, of course, like I said, I don't think that means that these people went and taught people.
Right.
That wrong.
As people migrate, beliefs migrate.
Yeah, and it wasn't, like I said, Q. So Q and C and A and B and X, and there's multiple, and so it's not like only one tribe or group or whatever of DNA D's in there. So there's multiple. They're not all exactly, but they all D, A, B, C, and not X, but Q all come from Asia. X probably comes from Europe, or maybe it came from northern Siberia, maybe possibly. But I actually think it might actually be from Europe.
Okay.
But that's like the only one in a sense. But so all of them come from this area, and people went to where X is at who were from that area. So eventually, I'm just saying the fact that I'm just trying to say that the fact that they all spread around is not like totally a shocker.
Right.
It all happened about 7,000 to 8,000 years ago, and all these things all diversified, which, like I told you before, I think, to me, mythology, some of like the Earth Diver or whatever, maybe older, I don't know, but sometime around 7,000 to 8,000, it really condenses. One thing is, like I told you, remember this 7,000 to 5,000 is when these clans went out, male-based clans, and forced everyone to be under their thumb,
right?
In a sense, in one way or another, or migrated if nothing else and brought ideas, even if they didn't dominate the area. They still brought these dominating ideas,
right.
So, but they also brought other religion, ideas too, not just that. So. Go ahead. So I'm just saying. To me, I think that it's loosely connected. It's not right to think like Graham Hancock, even though I know the area. The area is huge. It's like 500-mile area or something,
right?
Or maybe bigger than that. It's like huge, and that's where all this stuff kind of came from. But it's obviously not one thing. It's more like a shared groups of ideas and sort of.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah.
To me.
So the pattern of distribution of these stories suggests that they have a common origin in the Eastern Asiatic coastal region, spreading as peoples migrated west into Siberia and east to the North American continent.
Oh, wow. Almost sounds like mine.
However, there are examples of this mytheme found well outside this boreal distribution pattern. For example, the West African Yoruba creation myth and Obatala and Ududua.
But in Central Africa, they have a humongous portion of our. I don't remember now. I was going to say it's like, I think something, but all of a sudden I don't even remember. But anyways, it's some version of R, and R comes from Siberia. So
right. So
yeah, and it's I think it even reaches 47% or something in Central. Maybe it's Chad.
Interesting.
which is I think a lake or something, Lake Chad.
Okay.
But it's an area of Africa, Central Africa. Anyways, so yeah, so once again, the thing that they think is so strange, Damien's like, yeah, well, maybe not.
Doesn't seem that strange to me, but yeah. All right. Native American narrative. Characteristic of many Native American myths, earth diver creation stories begin as beings and potential forms linger asleep or suspended in the primordial realm. The earth diver is among the first of them to awaken and lay the necessary groundwork by building suitable lands where the coming creation will be able to live. In many cases, these stories will describe a series of failed attempts to make land before the solution is found. Among the indigenous peoples of the Americas, the earth diver cosmogony is attested in Iroquois mythology. A female sky deity falls from the heavens, and certain animals, the beaver, the otter, the duck, and the muskrat, dive into the waters to fetch mud to construct an island. In a similar story from the Seneca people.
So, good one, real quick. So, can you see how maybe building mounds relates to this thinking? Not just the water that they dive in, but the actual mound then they create?
Yeah, I can definitely see.
And like I said, I feel like this similar idea is seen in both Mesopotamia, who has ziggurats, which are also kind of like pyramids.
Right.
So the ziggurat, they believe that on the top is where the gods were. So, like I said, then you have Egypt that believes that the first sacred mound of creation came out of the waters as a pyramid.
Interesting.
So, yeah. You can wait a minute, earth diver, that kind
of. Yeah. In a similar story from the Seneca, people lived in a sky realm. One day, the chief's daughter was afflicted with a mysterious illness, and the only cure recommended for her, revealed in a dream, was to lie beside a tree and to have it be dug up. The people do so, but a man complains that the tree was their livelihood and kicks the girl through the hole. She ends up falling from the sky to a world of only water, but is rescued by waterfowl. A turtle offers to bear her on its shell, but asked where would be a definitive dwelling place for her. They decided to create land, and the toad dives into the depths of the primal sea to get pieces of the soil. The toad puts it on the turtle's back, which grows larger with every deposit of soil. In another version from the Wyandotte lived in heaven. The daughter of the big chief or mighty ruler was sick, so the medicine man recommends that they dig up the wild apple tree that stands next to the lodge of the mighty ruler, because the remedy is found on its roots. However, as the tree has been dug out, the ground begins to sink away, and the treetops catch and carry down the sick daughter with it. As the girl falls from the skies, 2 swans rescue her on their backs. The birds decide to summon all the swimmers and the water tribes. Many volunteer to dive into the great water to fetch bits of earth from the bottom of the sea, but only the toad, or the female in the story, is the one successful. So that's a couple examples of the earth diver.
Right, and you see that the similar, even though different, similar.
Yeah. Different, I guess, different tribes or different Native American nations.
Which, like I said, within the Dane, every single one of them has a different story of how they got the same language.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that, because once again, I think that people forget clans. Clans own, like the Tlingit up in Canada, they own, one family owns their family story.
Okay.
They have very big property rights.
That's interesting.
And those are hunter-gatherer property rights, by the way, not later. Hunter-gatherer property rights that you own, one family or one tribe owns a story. No one can tell it. Only they can, because they own it.
Right.
Anyways, I'm just... That's
an interesting way of doing it. It's like intellectual property.
It is intellectual property. Kind of like, it's the first intellectual property, obviously.
It's like... Before, what was their licensing process?
The threat of death?
Yeah. If you do this thing, there's punishment by law.
Yeah, punishment by law, right.
Yeah, it's interesting. A number of I guess we're on mound builders now.
Oh, so you're done with the other one? Okay.
Yeah, the other one's done. A number of pre-Columbian cultures in North America were collectively termed mound builders, but the term has no formal meaning. It does not refer to a specific people or archaeological culture, but refers to the characteristic mound earthworks which indigenous peoples erected for an extended period of more than 5,000 years. The mound builder cultures span the period of roughly 3500 BCE, or the construction of Watson Break, to the 16th century CE, including the Archaic period, Woodland period, and Mississippian period. Geographically, the cultures were present in the region of the Great Lakes, the Ohio River Valley, and the Mississippi River Valley and its tributary waters. The first mound building was an early marker of political and social complexity among the cultures in the eastern United States. Watson Break in Louisiana, constructed about 3500 BCE during the Middle Archaic period, is the oldest known and dated mound complex in North America. It is one of 11 mound complexes from this period found in the lower Mississippi Valley. These cultures generally had developed hierarchical societies that had an elite. These commanded hundreds or even thousands of workers to dig up tons of earth with the hand tools available, move the soil long distances, and finally, workers to create the shape with layers of soil as directed by the builders. But early mounds found in Louisiana preceded such cultures and were products of hunter-gatherer cultures. From about 800 CE, the mound-building cultures were dominated by the Mississippian culture, a large archaeological horizon whose youngest descendants, the Plaquemine culture and the Fort Ancient culture, were still active at the time of
By the way,
European
the Fort
contact.
Ancient culture genetically does not match all the other ones. In other words, all the other ones have similar DNA, but Fort Ancient, no.
Interesting.
So it is a copying of the idea, or shared, or maybe it's a reinvention. Like, I don't know.
Right.
I'm just saying I don't know how they came about.
Something that happened, but
for sure it's not the same DNA. So
right. So it's not just people moved there, and that's.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't looked into it enough but I do know, because I was trying to figure out what they all have in common. What they have in common is nothing in common with that other one.
Interesting.
Or not nothing, but I mean less in common. That's probably a better way to say it.
Right.
But the other one seems like shared groups that share DNA, and then this is a similar behavior, but not shared group.
Interesting.
So
they were still active at the time of European contact in the 16th century. One tribe of the Fort Ancient culture has been identified as the Moso Pelea, presumably of southeast Ohio, who spoke an Ohio Valley Siouan language. The bearers of the Plaquemine culture were presumably speakers of the Natchez language isolate. The first written description of these cultures were made by members of the Spanish explorer Hernando de Soto's expedition between 1540 and 1542. The namesake cultural trait of the mound builders was the building of mounds and other earthworks. These burial and ceremonial structures were typically flat-topped pyramids or platform mounds, flat-topped or rounded cones, elongated ridges, and sometimes a variety of other forms. They were generally built as part of complex villages. The early earthworks built in Louisiana around 3500 BCE are the only ones known to have been built by hunter-gatherer culture rather than a more settled culture based on agricultural surpluses. And the best-known flat-top pyramidal structure is Monk's Mound at Cahokia, near present-day Collinsville, Illinois. This community was the center of Mississippian culture. This mound appears to have been the main ceremonial and residential mound for the religious and political leaders. It is more than 100 feet tall, or 30 meters, and is...
Imagine thinking that was by accident.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Whoops, we accidentally built this 100-foot tall. Yeah.
Or imagine being a Westerner, right, for the first time and seeing that, and then thinking, "Oh, there must be just really no kind of culture in America." I mean, come on. you know they went, holy shit.
Yeah, they didn't really say, like, they didn't actually say, oh, well, these people have no idea what they're doing here. Right?
No.
Like, there's no way that you did that.
No.
So it is the largest pre-Columbian earthwork north of Mexico. This site had numerous mounds, some with conical or ridge tops, as well as palisaded stockades protecting the large settlement and elite quarter. At its maximum, around about 1150 CE, Cahokia was an urban settlement with 20,000 to 30,000 people. This population was not exceeded by North American European settlements until after 1800. Between 1540 and 1542, Hernando de Soto, the Spanish conquistador, traversed what became the southeastern United States. There he encountered many different mound builder peoples, who were perhaps descendants of the great Mississippian culture. De Soto observed people living in fortified towns with lofty mounds and plazas, and surmised that many of the mounds served as foundations for priestly temples. Near present-day Augusta, Georgia, De Soto encountered a group ruled by a queen, Cofitacheki. My apologies if that's incorrect. She told him that the mounds were within her territory served as burial places for nobles. The artist, Jacques Lemoyne, who had accompanied French settlers to northeastern Florida during the 1560s, likewise noted Native American groups using existing mounds and constructing others. He produced a series of watercolor paintings depicting scenes of native life. Although most of his paintings have been lost, some engravings were copied from the originals and published in 1591 by a Flemish company. Among these is a depiction of the burial of an Aboriginal Floridian tribal chief, an occasion of great mourning and ceremony. The original caption reads, "Sometimes the deceased king of this province is buried with great solemnity, and his great cup from which he was accustomed to drink is placed on a tumulus with many arrows set up about it." Mathurin Le Petit, a Jesuit priest, met the Natchez people, as did Lepage du Prat, 1758, a French explorer. Both observed them in the area that is today known as Mississippi. The Natchez were devout worshippers of the sun, having a population of some 4,000. They occupied at least 9 villages and were presided over by a paramount chief, known as the Great Sun, who wielded absolute power. Both observers noted the high temple mounds, which the Natchez had built so that the Great Sun could commune with God, the Sun, with God, aka the Sun.
Right.
His large residence was built.
But 1 second about that. But a lot of people try to act like somehow the sun belief is some stupid or funny thing. But actually, a lot of the sky deities are the sun.
Right.
And that includes European religions and everything. So, I mean, and Nordic religions and Asian religions. And so to me, it's not like a funny, like, haha, it's the sun. It's like realizing that actually, haha, it's all the sun. Like,
right.
Yours also.
Yours is the sun too.
Your nonsense belief is also the sun.
Yeah, that's right.
Or actually, a better way to say it is the hunter-gatherer religions in general related to some of this, but also related to older ones about the moon, because it's about traveling at night as opposed to traveling during the day. It's a lot of which is more nomadic. Follow the sun. I mean, follow the moon. More sedentary people follow the sun. But that's also all over the place too, because there's mixing of even that. So
yeah,
like I
said, to me, like honestly, it makes more sense to me to worship like the literal sun. The giver of life, the light bringer.
Right.
Like, come on.
Right. But I was just trying to say is it's not somehow limited to primitive societies.
No, for sure. Yeah.
It was very common for sky deities in general, like the daytime sun. Because what they used to have a lot of times was a 3 things. So the sun and the moon were 3, in a sense, expressions of 3 deities. Not always the same. Like sometimes like the center one, the day sun, or like the noon,
Right.
think about it that way. That bright white sun is considered male, and then the like sometimes I'm just giving a off the top of my head. There's a one where the two other ones are, I think it's either the daughter and the wife, or maybe it's just two daughters, or sometimes a daughter and a son, relating to the sky father sun. So, so in other words, like the morning, when the sun comes up, that's called the morning star, also called Venus.
Right.
It's weird to put those two together because, like, one is the sun, one is not.
One is not, yeah.
But you know, we just have to look at what the people believe, sort of. And so, anyways, I'm just saying. But the morning star or the morning sun and the evening sun were considered different expressions or even different deities than the noon sun, which I know to us is like, what?
Huh. Yeah.
So I'm just saying, so a lot of times you need to be more specific. When you say sun deity, you probably mean noontime deity. Or sometimes it doesn't even mean particularly just the sun, like as when they say tan in China, or in Mongolian, they say the tangent or something. But anyways, but they're similar thing, actually. It really means the sky during the noon time, in a sense, or whatever, or during the day, they would just say, but really they mean not morning, not night. So you figure that out. But I'm just saying, so, but you understand. So when you hear the deity, you need to be more careful. When you say sky, do you mean night sky, day sky? Do you mean the morning and the evening stars? Because those were considered, even though it's the sun, not the same as the sun proper.
Yeah, you really got to be, like you say, very specific, because every culture kind of does it kind of differently, even though they have these broad themes.
Right. Just like when I did that thing of saying a lot of things have Earth Mother and Sky Father. Yeah, but they don't have like this same exact things. Some of them say it's the Dirt Mother or whatever, right? But some, like there's the Tlingit, they believe that a woman's holding a pole, old woman, and then on the pole rolls the earth.
Okay.
He's holding this, so that's, they don't call her Earth Mother, they say old something, whatever, but it's a woman holding the fucking earth. It's the Earth Mother to me. I mean, then they have in a sense, the great, crow, whatever, which is also a creator. So
it doesn't seem unreasonable to say that it's related in some way.
Right, yeah. Well, that's what I'm trying to say is that goes back to my point of why Graham Hancock is so wrong, or anyone like that. When I say things are related, you need to understand it's loose.
Yeah.
It's not someone forced their thing and these people just adopted every great thing. God, what the no.
Right, like it's in the same way that me and my second cousin are related.
Right. Exactly. Well, that's what I'm trying to say is that that is the more, to me at least, the more accurate view of what's going on.
Yeah.
I try to simplify it because it's way more complicated, but I try to but even simplifying, I want you to not oversimplify it,
right,
to where you're starting to believe nonsense, which they're all totally the same. No, that's not. No.
Yeah. All right. So we were talking about the god, the sun, in the Natchez, and his large residence was built atop the highest mound, from quote, which every morning he greeted the rising sun, invoking thanks and blowing tobacco smoke to the four cardinal directions, end quote. Radiocarbon dating has established the age of the earliest archaic mound complex in southeastern Louisiana, one of the two Monte Sano site mounds, excavated in 1967 before being destroyed for new construction at Baton Rouge, was dated
because America loves destroying native artifacts.
Right, yeah.
Make sure we hone that in.
Yeah,
that's America, the piece of shit country that destroys native mounds. Okay, keep going.
Yeah. It was dated at 6,220 years ago.
Right. Isn't it? Because if there's a 6,000 year old pyramid, we should just destroy it for the heck of it.
That's right. We got to build something. here.
Something. Capitalism needs that to occur.
Yeah. It does make me think of like the whole thing of like with colonization. It was, well, we get to come and take this land because they're not using it right.
Yeah.
You know, they're not making use of it, except
They
obviously
are.
they were, but
Oh,
just
yeah,
not in
yeah.
the way that was approved by the friggin' capitalist colonizers.
Right. Well, but see, you know, though, even if it was, we would have still took it and then reused it.
That's right. Yeah.
Because there's no way we would accept their capitalism as the one we're going to adopt. No.
It's got to be the way we do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Manifest destiny.
Yeah. Researchers at the time thought that such hunter-gatherer societies were not organizationally capable of this type of construction. It has since been dated as about 4,500 BCE or 6,523 years ago, although not all agree. Watson Break is located in the floodplain of the Ouachita River near Monroe in northern Louisiana, securely dated to about 5,400 years ago, or around 3,500 BCE, in the Middle Archaic period. It consists of a formation of 11 mounds from 3 feet to 25 feet tall, connected by ridges to form an oval nearly 900 feet across. In the Americas, building of complex earthwork mounds started at an early date, well before the pyramids of Egypt were constructed. Watson Break was being constructed nearly 2,000 years before the better-known Poverty Point, and building continued for 500 years. Middle Archaic mound construction seems to have ceased around 2,800 BCE. Scholars have not ascertained the reason, but it may have been because of changes in river patterns or other environmental factors. With the 1990s dating of Watson Break and similar complexes, scholars established that pre-agricultural, pre-ceramic American societies could organize to accomplish complex construction during extended periods of time, invalidating scholars'
they
traditional.
can handle. Can they read?
Yeah, that's right. Invalidating scholars' traditional ideas of archaic society. Watson Break was built by a hunter-gatherer society, the people of which occupied this area only on a seasonal basis. Successive generations organized to build the complex mounds over a 500-year period. Their food consisted mostly of fish and deer, as well as available plants. Poverty Point, built around 1500 BCE in what is now Louisiana, is a prominent example of late archaic mound builder construction. Around 2500 BCE to 1000 BCE, it is a striking complex of more than 1 square mile or 2.6 kilometers squared, where 6 earthwork crescent ridges were built in a concentric arrangement interrupted by radical aisles. 3 mounds are also part of the main complex, and evidence of residences extend for about 3 miles along the riverbank of Bayou Macon. It is the major site among 100 associated with the Poverty Point culture, and is one of the best known early examples of earthwork monumental agriculture. Unlike the
Did you know about any of this stuff?
No, I don't think I did.
You weren't taught this in Canada?
No, I was not taught this. If I was, it was passed over so quickly that it never stuck.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to know because I don't feel like they talk about this when in America, but that Canada is different. So I just
that's true. But I still don't think we really touched on this at all. Unlike the localized societies during the Middle Archaic, this culture showed evidence of a wide trading network outside its area, which is one of its distinguishing characteristics. Horse Island, Florida, now a gated community next to Marco Island, was excavated by Michael Rousseau in 1980. He found an archaic Indian village site. Mound A was a burial mound that dated to 3400 BCE, making it the oldest known burial mound in North America. The oldest mound associated with the woodland period was the mortuary mound and pond complex at the Fort Center site in Glade County, Florida. Excavations and dating in 2012 by Thompson and Plukan show that work began around 2600 BCE, 7 centuries before the mound builders in Ohio. The Archaic period was followed by the Woodland period, circa 1000 BCE. Some well understood examples are the Adena culture of Ohio, West Virginia, and parts of the nearby states. The subsequent Hopewell culture built monuments from present day Illinois to Ohio. It is renowned for its geometric earthworks. The Adena and Hopewell were not the only mound building peoples during this time period. Contemporaneous mound building cultures existed throughout what is now the eastern United States, stretching as far south as Crystal River in western Florida. During this time, in parts of present-day Mississippi, Arkansas, and Louisiana, the Hopewellian Marksville culture degenerated and was succeeded by the Baytown culture. Reasons for degeneration include attacks from other tribes or the impact of severe climatic changes undermining agriculture. The Coles Creek culture is a late woodland culture, 700 to 1200 BCE, in the lower Mississippi Valley in the southern United States that marks a significant change in the cultural history of the area. Population and cultural and political complexity increased, especially by the end of the Coles Creek period. Although many of the class traits of chiefdom societies had not yet developed by 1000 CE, the formation of simple elite polities had begun. Coles Creek sites are found in Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Mississippi, and Texas. Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Mississippi, and Texas. The Coles Creek culture.
So one place, and you don't have to worry about this because there's no big deal, right?
Yeah, that's right. The Coles Creek culture is considered ancestral to the Plaquemine culture. Around 900 to 1450 CE, the Mississippian culture developed and spread through the eastern United States, primarily along the river valleys. The largest regional center where the Mississippian culture is first definitely developed is located in Illinois along a tributary of the Mississippi and is referred to as Cahokia. It had several regional variants, including the Middle Mississippian culture of Cahokia, the South Appalachian Mississippian variant at Moundville and Etowah, the Plaquemine Mississippian variant in South Louisiana and Mississippi, and the Cadone Mississippian culture of northwestern Louisiana, eastern Texas, and southwestern Arkansas. So all those three places.
Right.
Like the mound builders of the Ohio, these peoples built gigantic mounds as burial and ceremonial places. Fort Ancient is the name for a Native American culture that flourished from 1000 to 1650 CE among a people who predominantly inhabited land along the Ohio River in areas of modern-day southern Ohio, northern Kentucky, and western West Virginia. A continuation of the Coles Creek culture in the lower Mississippi River Valley in western Mississippi and eastern Louisiana. Examples include the Medora site in West Baton Rouge Parish, Louisiana, and the Anna and the Emerald Mound sites in Mississippi. Sites inhabited by the Plaquemine peoples continued to be used as vacant ceremonial centers without large village areas, much as their Coles Creek ancestors had done, although their layout began to show influences from Middle Mississippian peoples to the north. The Winterville and Holly Bluff, Lake George sites in western Mississippi are good examples that exemplify this change of layout, but continuation of site usage. During the terminal Coles Creek period, 1150 to 1250 CE, contact increased with the Mississippian cultures centered upriver near the future St. Louis, Missouri. This resulted in the adaptation of new pottery techniques as well as new ceremonial objects and possibly new social patterns during the Plaquemine period. As more Mississippian culture influences were absorbed, the Plaquemine area as a distinct culture began to shrink after CE 1350. Eventually, the last enclave of purely Plaquemine culture was the Natchez Bluffs area, while the Yazoo Basin and adjacent areas of Louisiana became a hybrid Plaquemine Mississippian culture. This division was recorded by Europeans when they first arrived in the area. In the Natchez Bluffs area, the Taenza and Natchez people had held out against Mississippian influence and continued to use the same sites as their ancestors. The Plaquemine culture is considered directly ancestral to those historic period groups encountered by Europeans. Groups who appear to have absorbed more Mississippian influence were identified as those tribes speaking the Tunacan, Chitimacan, and Muskogean languages. That's the end of that one.
Right on. Well, so what would you say that your experience, huh? You got to learn this new stuff you said you didn't know about, right?
Yep. Yeah, I didn't know much about these mounds, and I guess I can recognize the earth diver stuff. Like I've heard stories about that stuff, but I didn't recognize it as like the broader kind of mythology that went in various other different places, I guess.
Well, because it's not the Bible. No.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, there's a reason for that. You're not supposed to know it. Come on now. You're not supposed to know that there was pre-existing before the Bible.
Right, eh? No, it's
But does it give you a different perspective on Native Americans and stuff, or does it?
Well, I mean, for me, I already knew to some extent that these cultures were much more complex and they did much more.
Right.
But I mean, it gives me a lot more detail than I had before. Yeah, it's really cool. It's nice to know that there's like actually people like working on this stuff and not just like,
not giving a shit.
Yeah, instead
like
of just
the rest of America.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
You're like, I didn't want to say it, but
well, but also Canada, like the status quo was still very like ignorant about indigenous cultures and a lot of the stuff that they did and the ways that they lived and it's possible there's some things we could learn here.
There's a lot. I particularly like that they chose not to have an empire.
That sounds pretty good to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you mean advanced culture? I mean,
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Or a morally advanced culture.
That's like the goal. That's what we want to be. We want to be in a culture where we don't have an empire.
But I can totally relate to them. I don't want that either.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's great because it's like, that's why I said I really hate Graham Hancock, because he goes, oh yeah, white people did it.
Right.
Yeah, which is like disgusting. Like, I said, they can all say that he's not racist. I'll just say that what he says is racist.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that I judge what he personally believes, but I don't know. It's like someone said before, if you show up at a rally and everyone else there is welcoming fascists, you're at a fascist rally.
Yeah, that's right.
So, I don't know. You can play fucking word games all you want with your racism, but it still sounds like fucking racism to me. So.
Yeah, and I think that too often, like, I mean, just about racism, like people get hung up on the idea that I'm not a racist.
Right.
And instead of examining their behavior and the things they do that could be racist.
See, but that's a one of those wisdom things, because even like I'm a feminist. Does that mean I never say anything offensive to feminism? No.
Right. Like I still have to work very, very hard to, like, even just in my own home, to maintain that I'm not, taking on patriarchal roles in our household. We have to work very hard at that because these are so ingrained.
Right. And so if you accept the patriarchal roles, or like Graham Hancock, accept the racist ideas,
right,
what the hell does that make you?
I mean, maybe it doesn't make you personal. Like, it's so weird to think like even I have I don't talk about it that much. I have a black partner. I have black stepkids, right?
Okay.
I'm still racist. I try very, very hard, and I work and I grow, right? And I try very hard not to impose the ingrained white supremacist views on my children and my partner. And like, but that doesn't, call me racist. Okay, fine.
Well, but see, but I think that's the difference
Yeah.
You are actively trying to be anti-racist.
Yes.
So if you do racist things, I don't think you're a racist. Doesn't mean I think that Cory never, or like even Damien, never does something that's could be considered racist. I mean, I'm not fucking perfect, and I suffer from the bias of being in my own self. So
I'm a white person who was raised in white supremacy and colonialism.
So it becomes normalized.
So it's a thing that you have to actively be fighting against, and you have to accept. Like sometimes you're going to do shitty things, and if somebody calls you out on it, you have to be willing to learn and grow.
The difference is he doesn't want to remove himself in a sense from the racism because he still says this stuff. So it not only is it not accurate to archaeology, it's not accurate to me to the DNA, at least not the one he's claiming. And it's not accurate from my understanding of the mythological spread across the world to what he says.
Right.
So
and then on top of it, like it's got these racist undertones or overtones,
and he defends them.
Yeah, and then he defends it by saying, "I'm not a racist," right?
Yeah.
Like I'm not a racist person. Well, I don't care. Like,
right. So that's what I was trying to say is you're identifying the same thing I do. Yeah, but you're saying racist things. That's like saying, well, I'm not personally, a sexist, but doesn't mean I've never said anything sexist or don't need to work on it. Yeah. I mean, to me, it's just ridiculous. But like I said, I also like it because look at how amazing what they did, and why the fuck don't we know about this?
Yeah, exactly. That seems like a pretty big deal. Like, there's a lot like we could actually learn from indigenous cultures about the way to, the way to live in almost harmony with the land. Because I mean, I don't want to pretend that every indigenous culture did the best job they could possibly have done of living in harmony with the land, but they did a better job than we're doing now. So
well, every culture, like you said, is not the same. Some did slash and burn, where they burnt all the trees. It's not that, but I do understand what you're saying. But they still often had a reverence for nature, which I don't think we have to have that magical part of it, like animism.
Right.
Like I said, if I had to choose a religion, it would have to be animism because it's at least religion.
Yeah. Yeah.
So but it's not even just that. It's not just the lack of their myth in a sense, which they have a lot less in any kind of myth. But they also generally, like you were talking about respect, an animist thinks they are part of the world. It's their job to blend with the world, not the world's job to blend with them. Yeah. So capitalist mentality is fucking we'll just build a wall, we'll cement that bastard,
And if we can't convert people to our way, we'll genocide them.
You just get rid of them. That's what you do.
Like that's it, right?
Yeah. So but I think that in general, like some archaeologists will say, "Oh, well, Graham Hancock is good because he inspires people to ideas." Yeah, but he inspires them to this like wrong opinion of things.
Yeah.
And then the problem about it, then people have what's called post-purchase. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but post-purchase bias, maybe it's called that. Where what it is once you accept something, it's very hard to get rid of.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So it reminds me of this guy, right? This guy recently. I'm not going to say his name because I don't do that. That's not my thing. My thing is to teach people how to think better, not to attack this always one person. Sometimes I need to, but in this instance, I'm not going to say who it is. But he comes on my page on a thing where I talk about my gender and all that and my beliefs, right? And he comes and he posts a picture of all these terracotta, soldiers that were found in China. I already know what it is. And he goes, "What is this? Archaeology can't explain this." And I'm like,
are you fucking kidding me? Of course they can.
Yeah, they can. There's a fucking Wikipedia page for it.
What the fuck is wrong? With, yeah.
But anyways, but I know the fact that he's saying this, that mainstream archaeology can't explain this. I'm thinking, oh man, he's thinking about Graham Hancock. Oh my god, that fucking dickhead. Because I feel like I said, then they have all this bad thinking. It's not they're looking for truth. They're looking for truth like this. Graham Hancock teaches them to look, like through binoculars and only see nothing else but only what they're trying to look at, in a sense.
Yeah.
So they miss the big picture, which is, I don't know, everything.
Yeah, which is everything outside of this tiny.
Right. So I really feel like that it's a terrible, because he's teaching the people a terrible way, and then also every time someone says anything, you just attack the system. Like that's fucking. It's a reactionary to me. Right? It's not a real ascertaining of what's going on, but it's like this reactionary. Well, I feel like Trump lost, so the America is fucked and fucked. What? I mean, but it's all this fake bullshit. It's nothing good about it.
There's a I can kind of relate to it. There's a very attractive idea in sciences to be the one who discovers the truth that the mainstream will not accept. Right. I mean, people talk about Galileo, they talk about Sir Isaac Newton, they talk about all these Nikola Tesla, these guys, the truth tellers that science didn't want to accept. But the trouble is that in a lot of those cases, those guys were right about some things and then wrong about other things.
Totally agree. Yeah.
And it wasn't always it usually wasn't scientists that were disputing what they were saying. It was the mainstream hegemony, right? So like the Catholic Church wasn't a bunch of scientists saying, yeah, actually, heliocentrism is correct or whatever. Like
the moon is a hologram. Have you seen that
right.
nonsense? Like, what I'm saying, so but it's like that. How does that help people's thinking? It doesn't. But anyway, so he posts this picture, right? And I say, he goes, "What is this?" And I said, "It's an elite burial with servants to protect him in the afterlife. That's probably what it is. Something along that lines." And he says, "Well, but archaeologists, don't have answers for everything." And I'm like, answers to everything of what? Do you mean
that's right. What's your question?
When they start saying that, they're not making real arguments. They're not making real assessments like us, looking at someone having a king and then having slaves and us going, yeah, that's not good. Slavery, not good.
Right.
It's totally different than someone just making up some reactionary
or
nonsense.
It's quite telling in the way that he frames it. Like he says, oh, well, archaeologists don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
Okay, but I mean, you can jack off. You can just ask questions all day and find loopholes in what they do know, or you can accept the evidence of what they know and, let them find out the rest, or, try and contribute something instead of just naysaying.
But even they say he's just come up with ideas. You've seen me talk about my ideas in front of multiple archaeologists. Do they lose their fucking mind when I talk?
Nope.
No.
Usually it's very like, oh, that could be, or oh, I don't know about that. Or
but my point is, they don't react like him because they're not ridiculous ideas.
Yeah.
They do. If you go look at it, they have more support. So you're like, oh, okay. There's a reason why this makes. It's like I was saying about knowing that they were all oriented towards water. You know what I'm saying? I've looked at the facts and then start seeing the pattern and then go, hey, what is this pattern? Does it mean anything? It has to mean something. And then he says, yeah, I think it has an earth diver. I'm glad he said that because I wouldn't have thought of that.
That's interesting.
And then I was like, thank you.
That's interesting. Now we can work on that. Yeah. Now we can see where that goes. But
well, then it helps me grasp a little bit more what because I am actually would like to figure it out, or at least figure out some, not because of some ego thing, just because I would like to figure it out, or anyone to figure it out. It's not that I have to.
Right.
That's why I say too, I put all my info and I say that I share my stuff freely because I want to teach and also because I want to learn. And I also am hoping that an archaeologist looks at it and comes up with an idea and figures it out. I don't have to figure it out. Yeah. I'm just trying to help. That's why I feel like what he's doing is not helping.
Yeah.
He's attacking the people that are actually going to go do the looking.
And that's exactly it, right? There, he's attacking the people who do the work. That he's, not only is he undermining their work and attacking them as though they're the enemy, but he's also using their work and building off of it, right? Like he's making up his stories because he's got this background that already exists within the world.
I totally agree. Yeah, it's pretty bizarre.
Yeah.
And like I said, he always puts it like as archaeologists don't like it. All I was trying to say is he goes, archaeologists don't like big ideas. I talk about big ideas every time an archaeologist comes on. There's not been one time they came on I have not said ideas that they could have said is, wow, that's a big idea. But yet they didn't react that way because my ideas may be big, but they still talk to the truth. Or at least something close to it.
And that's it, right? Like, it's not that they have an aversion to big ideas. It's they have an aversion to falsehoods.
There you go. Right. That's what I was trying to say is that it's not wrong to make a speculation.
Yeah.
It is wrong to make a fallacy speculation.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're wrong, you're wrong.
Yeah, you're wrong.
It's just the way it is.
But so. And going back to this again. So my point is I want to teach, I want to enlighten people, and I want to remove all this bias that we have because we don't realize sometimes it's how we look at Native Americans, like you said, what kind of culture they have. I mean, it's all this bias. His ideas would not do as well if there wasn't these racist or ethnocentric or some other form of bigotry against Native Americans. If there wasn't, it wouldn't work. People were like, "Oh, what the fuck?" So that's why I do think it is important to tell the truth. And like I said, no matter how good your speculation, it could still be wrong, or it could be right. But you have to prove it's right by evidence.
Yeah,
that's how we know it's right.
Yeah, that's why, like, sometimes, like, even in when we're discussing certain like scientific issues, we'll say like, they got the right answer, but they got there through the wrong way. They didn't do it by showing the evidence or following the evidence. They got there by assuming things, and it turned out they were right.
It's called epistemic luck.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Which could have gone the other way. So
it could have easily been wrong, but because you didn't follow the evidence. But
go ahead and plug your show and what you're doing, and then we'll check out of here.
Yeah, Mind of a Skeptical. Not the Mind of a Skeptical Leftist anymore. I'm just calling it the Skeptical Leftist Podcast now.
Right on. So
I'm rebranding. So yeah, it's on YouTube. It's on all the podcast apps. I know Spotify sucks, but it's probably the best place to get it for my podcast version, because you can also get a video version, and if you want, you can give me 99 cents a month and get the long versions of everything I do.
There you go.
But yeah, so I've got one more interview in the can. I've got a couple upcoming interviews, and of course there's Red Reviews, comes out every 2 weeks. And I'm about to move at the end of May or end of April. So things are going to kind of get hectic here with my work schedule and whatnot. So my production is going to be down a little bit for the next little while, but hopefully I'll be back up and running pretty quick.
Well, I appreciate what you do, and I thank you for coming and doing this with me too.
I appreciate coming here on every second Saturday and doing the show.
At least you learn one or two things, right?
Yeah, that's right.
With me, you always go, I don't know what I'm going to learn today, but it's going to be something.
Yeah, that's right. There's always something.
Right on. Well, everyone take care and have a good day.
Have a good one.
Hello, and welcome to my channel. I am Damien Marie AtHope. In the simplest terms, I am an atheist-humanist philosopher and prehistorical writer-researcher at DamienMarieAtHope.com. I am specifically an axiological atheist. And axiological atheism can be thought to involve ethical and value theory reasoned and moral argument driven apatheism, agnosticism, atheism, antitheism, antireligionism, secularism, and humanism. Axiological atheists can be understood as a value theory or a value science atheist. As an axiological atheism's ethically reasoned and constructive pro-humanity. I am an axiological thinker, value theorist. The science of goodness, worthiness, usefulness, valuableness, virtue, reliableness, accuracy, validity, morality, integrity, beneficialness, etc., etc. We axiologists have a value consciousness. And in general, we see the architecture of humanistic humanitarianism value in people that we see as dignity beings. Places and things are not. Axiology is a value theory. In its broadest sense, it involves areas of philosophy that are deemed to encompass some evaluative or evaluation aspect. Therefore, it crosses almost all domains in some way or another. Now for a more detailed terms as to what I am. I am an axiological atheist, an anti-theist, an anti-religionist, secularist, humanist, rationalist, writer, artist, poet, philosopher, advocate, activist with schooling in psychology, sociology, as well as I am an autodidact, self-taught in science, archaeology, anthropology, and philosophy. I promote science and am against pseudoscience, pseudohistory, pseudomorality, things that are found in religion.